We have a lot ahead of us this evening, everyone, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, calling the study session for May 7th, 2024 to order. I want to point out to the council that our calendar was not changed. Council members, please silence your phones. Our calendar was not changed. I usually don't say that till the regular hearing, but I'll say it now too, since we're going to be here for a while. Our calendars were not modified, but we do have Student of the Month this evening also at 6 p.m. So be prepared, just FYI. And for our study session this evening, we have 4 items. We're starting with budget with Kelly Faust, please.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's like my favorite time of year. We get to talk about budget. I will just do a brief overview of high-level information. I know there's a lot of information that's been provided to Council in packet and follow-up, and then we'll open for discussion.
1 second, Kelly. I can hear you talking as if I'm standing in front of you, but I don't feel like I'm hearing you from speakers. Is anybody else here? Okay. No, everybody else is having the same reaction.
I have 2 red lights.
I know you are on, but I have a feeling, oh, here we come. Sean, it sounds, I can hear Kelly talking, but I'm not hearing her from speakers anywhere. I hear it above us. Do you hear it? We're not hearing it over here then.
Mayor, I can hear her from the speakers. Mm-hmm.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Kelly, sorry.
I think IT just has that magic ability. They just walk in and everything starts working. Oh. Is it, I feel like I can hear myself. Okay.
But
So she's no longer magic. Is that the
Testing, 1, 2, 3. We'll work the kinks out and then talk through budget.
I know everything you have to tell us is so riveting that I want to make sure that we all hear it and it's recorded for the record.
It's good stuff.
I know it is. It's important.
What about the other podium?
We can hear everything in there just fine, so I'll see if I can turn yours up more.
Up too. I turned mine up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I turned
Testing,
mine up
1,
too.
2, 3.
Okay, let me try.
Something.
Carry on maybe, and I'll see if I can get it back there. See if I can do something.
Okay, I'll try to say only boring things when you can't hear me and then save the good stuff for last. I know. We try as hard as we can to put some pictures in, but there are some important numbers to discuss tonight as well. So as you're aware, Gilbert is best in class. We continue to get a lot of accolades for the town. Best city for early retirement, best city for renters in the U.S., fastest growing city, second place, best place to raise a family, best place to live in the Southwest, and the healthiest mid-size employer in Arizona, number 3. Can you hear me a little bit, even when it's out? Okay. Do you want me just to try the public mic? Try that podium for a minute?
You can try the handheld mic that's on the desk as well.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear that one? Not at all. Back on this one. Try this one. Can you hear me on here? Oh, but this one, Still the same with it? Talk as loud as I can, and then when it pops in, you'll have to cover your ears. Okay. We'll give some background on the budget year and things that are happening. As you're very aware, there was loss of the residential rental out of our sales tax. The impact to Gilbert is about $8 million per year, and that will start in January of 2025, coming up midway through next fiscal year. State shared income tax has also seen a reduction. Fiscal 24 had about $73 million of revenue. We're planning for about $59 million in fiscal 25, and then in fiscal 26, it will probably continue to decline somewhere in the $48 to $52 million range before hopefully it starts to increase from there. But that is kind of the outlook, one of the major revenue sources for the town, and it impacts how we look to the future and prepare our budgets to make sure that we don't spend ongoing dollars or one-time dollars for ongoing things. We've also continued to have inflation and supply chain issues. It's getting better, but not fully resolved yet. We are a growing community. We continue to face infrastructure needs for both growth and aging as those come together in the timeline. We've noticed that it's a very tight budget year for fiscal 25, which is the budget that we're presenting before you today. And looking forward, we anticipate things will continue to be tight for Gilbert. The budget process, this is a year-long process. We kicked it off in mid-September. There's budget input from all of the departments, we get information from the community, 311, any of the master planning. Lots of information comes together to inform the budget requests that are made by the departments in September through November. And then our executive team gets together and deliberates in January and February, which we call the Hunger Games, and walk through what are the most important needs that we feel need to be presented to Council in the recommended budget based on the available resources. There's the financial retreat in March where we help get additional financial information and decision-making from the Council. Patrick and the Town Manager's Office review the budget in March, and then we have our Council study session this year, this first part of May. Preliminary adoption will be the next Council meeting in May and final adoption in June. So a good, long process of input and deliberation. The requested versus recommended budget this year is different from most other years. So we had requested about $70 million total. In the recommended budget, there's about $38 million. That's about 54% of what was requested is getting recommended in the budget. In the past, this number has been closer to 75%. So it is a very tight budget year, just not enough money to do all of the things that would be nice or good in our community, some really important items as well, but doing the best that we can to provide the citizen services and maintain the priorities of council that you have given to us. If we break that $38 million out by fund, you'll see general fund at the top is the majority. It is our largest fund, so it makes sense that that has the lion's share of that increase, about $20 million. And then the enterprise funds you can see, and the special revenue funds. We'll go into these in more detail. On general fund, if we break that out by our different initiatives, maintaining service level is the largest amount there. About $3.5 million of that $9.5 are related to FTEs, helping people to be able to do the work that needs to be done. And then most of the other are small amounts across the departments in the general fund for increases in contracts like tree trimming or landscaping or increases in utility, small amounts that are just needed to continue the operations that they're currently doing. The other largest item is the life cycle replacement, about $7.7 million. Two major items make this amount up. There's a $3 million investment for the self-contained breathing apparatus in fire, replacing those items, and a $2 million investment to replace police radios, and that's the bulk of what makes up that life cycle replacement. In the streets and enterprise funds, you'll see that the largest category here is also maintaining service levels, keeping the lights on, increased cost with supplies that are needed to run the different operations, raw water costs, street maintenance costs, all of those types of things are built into that number. If we take the 38 million, divided out instead by strategic initiatives, most of them are going towards an exceptional built environment, trying to take care of the infrastructure that we have. In the middle, prosperous community, and the smallest investment was identified with strong economy. But fortunately, we still have a strong economy that works for us. Recommended positions, there are 46 positions total that are recommended in the budget, and council was given the individual sheets on each of those positions that provides the business case and justification for all of those, mostly in the general fund, which is our largest area of FTEs, and then you can see broken out across the enterprise funds as well. Capital projects is where the bulk of our budget is allocated. And that is true of what we're recommending in fiscal 25 as well. So these are each of our different CIP project categories. Street improvement and water system improvements are the two largest categories. That's where we're working on North Water Treatment Plant. That's the largest project that we have, and one of the largest projects, I think, in the state. So total CIP this year is recommended to be $1.6 billion. $500 million is towards water treatment plant alone. That one project is a third of our CIP. So it's a very large project. As we work through that, then this number should come down over time. If we break up that $1.6 billion of CIP investment into what's carrying forward projects that we had budgeted in previous years that we're continuing to work on, and the new projects, it's about $1.2 billion towards the carry forward, about $430,000 of new investment for additional projects that are needed that make up the whole, and fairly evenly spread across the different projects with the bulk in the streets and water. Good reminder that with our CIP, Gilbert does things just a little bit differently, where we do budget the entire amount of the projects up front. That allows us to do the full contracts and to make sure that we can finish any of the projects that we start. So we won't be spending a $1.5 billion all in fiscal 25, but we will be working on that many projects that add up to that total amount. If we look at the comparison between fiscal 24 budget and fiscal 25 budget, fiscal 24 was just over $2 billion. The proposed budget for fiscal 25 is about $2.3 billion. The major difference there is that bottom line, the CIP investment. That is where the bulk of our budget is, and the bulk of the increase is in that area. There is other increases across. One I'll note is on the special revenue. That includes our grants funding area. So that $22 million increase, 20 of that is in contingency for grants. Typically, we've budgeted $5 million of contingency for grants. We found that that has not been enough the last couple of years because we're starting to receive more grant money in. And so we need to increase that. We're recommending $25 million so that we have the amount that would match with any of the money that comes in. We would have to get the grant money and then we would be able to spend it, but this allows that contingency. We also have property tax as part of our budget. This is our secondary property tax, which is only used to pay for voter-approved debt that voters approved on a ballot. And we do need to repay those principal and interest payments. The amount we need for the upcoming year is $33,275,000. This does include about $625,000 for delinquency and reserves and refunds. That was our best guess at the time we needed to do the public notice for our property tax. Since that time, the county has given us information that there's a lawsuit that is being settled. Gilbert's portion of the refunds are likely to be about $1.5 million, so more than we anticipated. This means that the levy that is proposed here is not enough to cover all of our anticipated expenses next year, and we will need to dip into our reserves in order to make all of the payments. But that is why we have the reserves. We should still be able to maintain our 5% minimum. With the proposed rate levy here, it would maintain the same rate that citizens had last year, which is the 98 cents exactly per $1,000 or per $100 of assessed value. The upcoming milestones. Tonight we have our budget study session, which is the opportunity, it's the first opportunity of council to talk together in the open public meeting and give any direction to staff about changes that might be wanted and have those questions and dialogue. Tonight at the regular council meeting, we'll have the public hearing for our property tax levy. There's not a decision that's made there unless council wants something different in the documents that will be coming for final adoption, but that will be the first public hearing there. At the May 21st meeting will be preliminary budget adoption. That will set the maximum amount for the budget for the entire year. And it will be the CIP review also that night. Then on June 4th is final everything, final budget adoption, final CIP adoption, and final tax levy adoption. And with that, I'm happy to open for questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Very nice to hear from you. I actually hear from you. Who would, that was a Chuck joke. I think I need to put money in the jar for that one. Sorry. Does anyone have any comments or questions to start off with Kelly to start off this discussion tonight? Councilmember Bongiovanni?
Thank you, Mayor. Kelly, can you bring up that first slide again, or first or second slide, the one that showed the one that showed 52% of recommended. 54%, okay. Which department per se had the most not recommended? You understand what I'm trying to say here?
Yes, I don't know that off the top of my head. When we deliberate, we don't talk about it by who's getting what percentage. We talk about individual budget packages. What is the merit of this package versus what the other needs are in other departments? And so it varies by year. I can look it up and get back with you, but I don't know specifically.
Please do, thanks.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Vice Mayor?
Kelly, just for the record, would you go through again why when our residents receive their tax bill, it shows that it has gone up even though our rate has not gone up?
Happy to. It is a rate based on the property value. So if the value of your property increases, then the dollar amount that you pay would increase even though the rate is the same. And most property, there's a cap. Property values can usually only go up by about 5% per year. So most property does that, but usually doesn't go up more than that.
Thank you. When we get into a negative, that's when we start to worry.
We hope that the town property values don't decline and start to have a negative. That's bad for everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Those rates are based on a full cash value versus a limited cash value, and the assessor's office is in charge of that, and it's actually that 5% falls under state law that even the assessor cannot modify in any way, shape, or form. So you can be guaranteed pretty much that if your home doesn't meet that full cash value, that your home will go up 5% no matter what. And it doesn't have to do with the real estate value of what you could sell your house for. This is the assessed value through the assessor's office. Sorry, it's my hot topic. I am like, yes, I have this like drilled in at this point. Councilmember Torgerson.
I'm curious, we lost 73 million in shared revenues for 2024?
Councilmember Torgerson, that's the total amount that we received.
Okay.
So we received 73 million. We're likely to receive about $60 million of state shared income tax in fiscal 25.
Okay, so that'll be a reduction of about $14 million next year, and the year after, another 9 or so,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And we're losing $8 million in rental tax,
Yes.
and we're making that up where?
Some of it we
Trick
knew
question.
was coming. Like we knew with the state shared income tax that fiscal 24 would be an abnormally high year just with how everything came together in changing the formula from 15% to 18% in how much is shared to cities and towns. And the flat tax rate hadn't gone into effect yet. And so we counted on about $15 million as one-time money when we built fiscal 24. So we did it just with one-time projects, and that helps us so that we didn't have to do cuts into fiscal 25. On the residential rental, it is decreasing the amount of our sales tax. We're continuing to grow in sales tax, so it's given us a little bit of offsetting. And as you're aware, we traditionally under budget our sales tax because it is the most volatile. And then if it comes in strong or higher than we anticipate, we use it for one-time projects in the upcoming year. So these decreases are crunching our budget, but because of our preparations, it's mostly on the one-time side. And then we just don't see the growth for additional ongoing funds moving forward from here, which is difficult on our personnel or our operating side.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Torgerson, that's something we plan on talking about in the upcoming fiscal year, because going forward, we do see ongoing funds being exceptionally tight, and we're going to need to discuss where we can potentially find new revenue streams to keep up with service level demands.
Any other comments, questions at this time? Councilmember Tilke?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate you breaking out for the public the how we do things a little differently, and the fact that it's 1.6 billion on the CIP projects. That's not our operating budget, and so I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm just mentioning it again because I think it gets very confusing for the public as they look at this as it comes out in the different medias. I just wanted to mention that, and Dawn, thank you for getting back with me. As I was looking at the high-level budget numbers, I didn't see anything that looked like budgeting for a website or the enhanced 311 software that we use to communicate. And I was told that we're evaluating that this year, so there's no funds in it being allocated, but it hasn't been lost. It was an important component of our communications subcommittee last year, and I just wanted the council to know that that piece hasn't been lost just because it's not funded yet. Thank you.
Other comments or questions at this time? Councilmember Buckley?
The other one. Thank you. I don't really have any questions, mostly because your staff has been fantastic in giving me tons of information. I have the update book, and I have the 2025 budget book, and I have about 8 other books, and I just wanted to say thank you for all of this information and making this easy for me.
Thank you.
So I have one other item. I did want to say, and I hope everybody, I wish more of the residents were here, because I am really happy we were able to keep our 0.98 tax levy. So that's a big deal right now with everything else that we're having to do. But thank you.
Councilmember Torgerson?
Just because I did not bring it with me. The new hire packet, how much is that total per year?
I'm sorry, ask again, the new what?
The new hires, the jobs that are coming on?
About $3.5 million in the general fund. I can't remember what it is total across all funds off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions at this time? I think we extended this study session so that we could have enough time to make sure that we had time to discuss this budget with Kelly. So I just want to make sure that everybody's asking their questions and making their comments now, since Kelly very eloquently pointed out this is the first time that all 7 of us have sat down to talk about budget for this year. Seeing none. Councilmember Tilke?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question, but I just want to echo comments also that Kelly and the staff has been amazing at answering all of the questions that we've had and gotten back to us on a timely manner. And I think from my perspective, that's why I don't have a lot of questions up on the dais tonight.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Councilmember Gabrowski?
Thank you, Kelly. I do have one question. When there was uncertainty during the years of the pandemic, you had given a presentation about how there were certain gates built in if certain revenues weren't coming in as strong as we thought they were. Do you feel that with the reduction and loss of some of our revenue streams that we're going to need to have a mid-year evaluation of budget based on that kind of philosophy of having gates?
Great question. Thank you, Councilmember Kabrowski. During the pandemic, we were very uncertain about what our revenues would look like, and sales tax can change on a dime. It is the majority of the money that pays for our general fund services, which is parks, police, council budgets, IT, HR, all of those types of things. And so we want to be very careful that we have the money to be able to continue those operations. To do that, we've continued to be very conservative on our sales tax estimates, which is where most of our revenue comes from for general fund. So for the fiscal 25 budget that's before you, we have projected $142 million of revenue from sales tax. Current fiscal year will probably get about $157 million of revenue. So there is a delta there, recognizing some of that loss will be the residential rental that will go away. Our anticipation is that we will be able to get at least $142 million of revenue. If that's the case, there's no changes that we need to make into fiscal 25. Everything will align perfectly. If anything comes in above that, then it will have one-time money for projects as we build the fiscal 26 budget. But it just helps us to have a little more time to react and prepare if there are changes in sales tax. But there can already be a decrease in our sales tax, and we won't have to make a change to fiscal 25.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bongiovanni?
Thank you, Mayor. Kelly, what kind of, the supply chain issues and inflation, can you compare the last 6 months with the 6 months before that? Are you seeing any kind of delta or any kind of change in that at all?
I would need to phone a friend, somebody in operations, because they are a little closer to the actual contracts and invoices.
Kelly, if I could take a first stab at that, Mayor, Councilmember Bongiovanni, it really depends on the service line and the supplies such as fire apparatus. We know we still have a particularly long lead time, police cruisers in particular. Some manufacturers have placed a hold on any new orders. So we continue to evaluate those, but it really just depends by service line on what we're seeing. We do see some normalization in some areas.
I should say overall, are we seeing anything flatten at all?
Yeah, we're starting to see some normalization in things that had become problematic post-pandemic.
Thanks.
Councilmember Torgerson?
Just because we've done a little differently this year than last year, and I was a little out of sync last year. If I look at something and let's just say I think that one area is over or extremely under budgeted, when is the time and proper place to bring that up?
It's always good if you just have questions to get more information in detail as we're preparing for this meeting. That's a good time to get additional information on specific budgets. You can always bring it up in this meeting and let us know if you're concerned about a particular area. We can take a look at it. We probably can't, I don't know how much information I have off the fly on a particular department to be able to answer right here, but this is a good opportunity to pick it up. It's also a good opportunity in any of your one-on-ones with Patrick to let him know that you're concerned about a particular area of town, and then we can work during the budget process to make sure that it gets addressed. So anytime, the sooner the better.
Right. Well, I did ask for some information the other day, and I think you're compiling it. So when that's ready,
I think we emailed that out to council last week. With all of the department expenditures.
Okay, I missed that one, so I do need to find that. Okay, I would be a little more prepared if I had seen that email. I must have left swiped it, sorry. I'll wait to look at it before I bring it up.
I apologize. On Thursday is where you'll see that email.
That, I finished, thank you, I just wanted to make sure. Just for the team in the back room, my screen up here is not indicating which council member is speaking. It says council member 1, council member 2, council member 3, not by name. So just for IT, maybe we can take a look at that at the end of the study session, please. And it looks like the screen, I'm not sure if the screen has our names or if it says one because I can't see it from here, but just to help. Anyway, so that was a great lead-in, Councilmember Torgerson, thank you. I wanted to ask about the fact that we had discussed at one of the council retreats and adding funding to the mayor and council budgets for discretionary spending, whether it be employee development, council member development in this case, or for use in other ways. And so I was really opposed to that at the time, still sit here opposed to that. And after seeing the email from Melanie with the requests from our nonprofits and where $430,000 that we're giving to nonprofits isn't going very far these days, that I would prefer that we take the discretionary funds that we're going to add to the council budget and move them to the nonprofit so that we could maybe help more organizations in a better way, in my opinion. I think that because Melanie's system is so good at taking in the applications that she takes in from nonprofits and distributes those funds in such a way that they get where they're really needed, I would be more comfortable with that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know we discussed it at the retreat. I know it got kind of tossed around, but I don't know that it was actually decided, but I believe that it's included in the budget to increase mayor and council's funding for discretionary funding.
Was that, the discretionary funding, was it that large of an amount?
Well, I think it would have been
don't
about
recall it being-
$48,000 total to mayor and council, with $12,000 to mayor, $6,000 to each council member, if I did my math correctly.
And that doesn't include the concession that we get every
Right.
month?
Your pay, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, no. That's on top of everything else.
Okay, okay.
And right now, we're at 2,000 or 3,000 for mayor and 600 for council members, or 800 for council members. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is. And Kelly, I know you sent me an email.
And how much are they wanting a nonprofit, 490 something?
No, they have 430 already allocated from the email that Melanie sent out. That's how
Oh,
it's been
okay.
for several years, and it just doesn't go very far. We had to say no or give less funding to many nonprofits this year compared to last year and the year before that, because everyone's expenses are increasing. And I would rather see us use that funding in a different way,
Yeah,
to go to the
yeah.
nonprofits.
I don't have an issue with that either way myself, but my thoughts are also, we're adjusting our budgets, I mean, we're all having to adjust our budget, and we don't know, did they just ask for that, or is that just, did they come and ask us for more money? Is that what they did, the nonprofit?
The nonprofits have to apply through Melanie's office each year, and they make a request, and then we have a group internally that goes through all of those requests and decides how much we can meet, if we will fulfill a request for a nonprofit or not. Melanie sent us an email the other day with it all detailed as to which nonprofits will be getting funding and which will not be getting any funding, which will be getting adjusted funding from last year, maybe less, or maybe getting half what they asked for. Maybe half what they got last year even, because we're trying to spread the funding more to more organizations, which is wonderful, but at the same time, it's less to the organizations too.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand that, and I want us to help, but I just feel that there could be no end to, we could give them $1 million, or whatever, but I'd like a little bit more time to.
Okay.
I'd just like to have a little bit more time to look at what they're requesting.
Well, we don't make the decision on who's getting what with what they're requesting. It keeps it out of council's hands, which I think is a much better process. It goes strictly through Melanie's office. She gets the requests, and then they have a group that goes over all of those requests. I'm asking that in next year's budget, we increase the funding from $430,000 to potentially a little bit more, so that there's more money to go around to the nonprofits instead of allocating discretionary funds to the council. I'm opposed to the discretionary funds to the council either way. And if we are going to put those funds into our budget, I would rather see them go someplace where I think they could do more good. That's my opinion on this.
Okay. You're saying a little bit more. Do you mean maybe 450,000
Yeah.
or 500,000?
460, something like that. Just the difference between what we're getting now as council to what was being recommended for council.
Okay,
It's not very much.
okay. Well, yeah, I haven't totally looked at this, so I just wanted to maybe get some questions answered. Have they adjusted their budget at all?
We don't look, I'm not looking at each nonprofit's budget. That's not our role. They're asking for a certain amount for what they're requesting, and then Melanie's group looks at how much we're going to be able to offer them.
Okay. So after the meeting, or can I meet with you, Kelly, and check on that and look at that?
Yes, happy to meet with you.
I would like to do that, yeah.
And if there is a change that's requested of council, I need that to be a change from the majority of council, and then I can update documents for preliminary budget.
Yeah.
Right, it would have to be a majority of us agreed to that change so that Kelly could then adjust the budget that way, so that when it comes back in the future, in the next few weeks, that we would have it to look at from that perspective.
Okay.
Councilmember Tilkey, sorry, I don't have names, so I'm going to have to look at microphones.
Thank you, Mayor. If I'm understanding, we had for council, it was 3,000 and now it's 6,000 that was deemed as discretionary income. None of us even knew we had discretionary income, so it wasn't ever spent. So it's not like we've been spending anybody's money, but I think because it's the first year, I'm still a little confused, quite frankly, if what's going to be, what's charged for if you go to conference. Is that part of your discretionary fund, or is that a separate fund? So I think when we looked at the discretionary fund, I thought it was so that it would cover certain conferences, which is development for the council, and I thought that was getting close to the 6. Dead. Oh, no, I'm alive again, sorry. So I think that was how we came up with that. It's not just discretionary income that we take in our paychecks or, any of that. So I think I would like to see how that works out a little bit before we made a change to that. That would be my only suggestion. But to your point of, I do think we need to be looking at what we allocate for nonprofits. There's a lot of need out there. Everything that we've done through our Community Engagement Task Force shows the number of nonprofits that assist our community every single day, and we give just a little bit of money towards those. And the cost savings on the back end when you can take care of issues early on through our nonprofits saves our community a lot of money. And so I would like to explore raising that amount for nonprofits, maybe give it this year to find out how this really works, since we're going to be taking dollars out of that discretionary fund if you go to the league conference or some of the national ones. But that would be my recommendation.
Great points, and I didn't get that far in the conversation, which is I was left with an uncomfortable feeling after our retreat that it was going to be discretionary funds, not knowing how they were going to be used, what they were going to be used on, how you were going to ask for those funds. If it was for development, that's fine, but we don't see council members going to conferences except for the league conference. $3,000 should be way more than what is necessary to go to the league conference locally this year, especially it's in Phoenix, the Biltmore, I think. So I don't think any of us have been using the funding that has been there. Like you said, it's not funding that's been used over the years. And so to just increase it was what I was having a really hard time with. And then how was it going to be used? We are very, very, very fiscally responsible here. And to just say we're going to add the over $30,000 to the mayor and council budget for discretionary funding and not have a manner in which we were going to use those funds, that's what I've been having trouble with since that point. So, Councilmember Torgerson.
I would also assume that unused funds gets returned and moved forward.
With the council, we don't work on the same zero-based budgeting system, so the same amount stays in the council budget moving forward. And it doesn't necessarily go away if it doesn't get used after so many years, because it is the council budget and years change and things change and different things pop up.
But in the future, let's say it accrued X amount of dollars, that money could be put back into the general fund.
Well, it's not money that's not it's money that's not used, but it's budgeted for.
Right, but we could change the budget in the future.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Torgerson, any unspent funds would roll into the general fund itself. This same amount of money would be allocated to your line items for the following year.
Same amount, unless changed on the
Right,
budget,
so
and
the
that's what we were
amount stays the same,
discussing.
but the money, unspent money, for instance, this year, I probably spent zero. I mean, unless.
You went to
I
a
think-
conference. You went to 2 conferences, so you spent a little.
Right, but I mean, discretionary thing, I think I broke a case, right? I don't even know what's sitting there, but that would go back into the general fund and another $800 or whatever it is allocated for the next year.
Kelly will gladly zero-base your budget for you.
No, Kelly, no.
And we do zero-based council's budgets, but usually it's if the cell phone cost increase, we add just a little bit more. And we have taken it out in the past because nothing was getting used, but we do try and keep each of the council member budgets the same amount so that it's equal across the board, and then mayor's is typically a little bit more.
Yes, and I mentioned to you recently that there's not specifically a line item for the state of the town, say, and it's mandated that the mayor host a state of the town, but there's no budget for it. So you asked me how much we spent, and it was just out of the mayor's budget, but we only spent like $200 because I don't have a budget to spend. So, you know, that's how responsible we are. The money's not there, so I'm not going to spend it. I'm not going to go spend $5,000 on a state of the town when I don't have $5,000 budgeted to spend on a state of the town, which would be ridiculous
We can get
anyway.
you contingency for whatever you need, Mayor.
I'm good, thank you. I'm cheap when it comes to that kind of stuff. But, that was my concern, was how it was going to be used, when it was going to be used, you know, where it was going to be used. I want to know where the funds are going and what we're going to be doing with them. So, oh, I got names back on my screen. Whoever fixed that, thank you. Councilmember Kaprowski.
Thank you for bringing up that topic. I think that what I would be comfortable giving Kelly direction on is that in general, I would support increasing the amount we give to nonprofits, but I would want the direction to be more to staff to determine where that budget could come from. It could come from some of the amount that came from the mayor and council's continuing education funds, but that's a very, very small amount that I'd like to increase the amount to the nonprofits even more. And I know we're on a super slim budget right now, but I would be open if we have a majority to give direction to explore if we can scrape up a little bit more to bolster the nonprofit amount and then come back to us on like where that might come from.
Thank you for that support. I'm going to say that when I came on the council in 2015, we were literally trying to dwindle down the amount that we were giving to nonprofits, and it was on a slope to go down to zero. And in the 2015-2016 budget, Mayor Lewis pushed us back the other way. And 2016-2017, we came to this $430,000 plateau that we've now been at since that point. And as we've seen over these past several years, there's been such a change in everyone's budget and the need. Gilbert doesn't have the facilities within our community, so we rely on these nonprofits so heavily to provide the services to our residents, whether it's at the Heritage Center, Ascend, and all of the great work that they do within the community, with the need for rental assistance right now and utility assistance right now because of the increases to everyone that everyone's facing. I talked to our old friend, Judge Ray. Evictions have increased 400% in his court. 400% in his court since he's been there. So that's alarming, right? And we're providing a very small assistance to our residents in some way for them. Do we have other, Vice Mayor, would you like to comment?
My expectation is if we make more money available, that the staff would look very closely of the philosophy of funding these nonprofits. Are we going to target certain nonprofits and give them more money, or are we going to spread it out to more nonprofits? I think that's something they're going to have to take a look at.
Thank you. And I think that's something that Melanie looks at very closely already with her team. And if you go and look at the report that she sent us just over the past week, I want to say it was Wednesday or Thursday of last week, it's always under the priorities that the council has set. And it's really focused on the priorities of the Community Engagement Task Force from when I was reading it last week. And to see the amounts that we're really cutting to make sure we're trying to hit more, but we're doing less to each one. So if there's a way that we can really assist with that. Dawn, did you want to make a comment on that? Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Anderson, It is a process that the teams go through. We also include outside entities, nonprofits, as a part of that process to assess the needs. It is based on the needs assessments that we do for the community. We're in the process of doing one now, and that sets the areas that we look at for how those nonprofits get that funding.
Yep, the last needs assessment, we set priorities based on how that assessment came, that survey came back, and those were the priorities that they worked with moving forward. Any other comments on this topic? Councilmember Torgerson?
Not on that topic. I'll wait until people have said what they need to say.
Mayor, I think if we're going to ask the staff to look at raising the amount, we should give them an amount. And so, do you remember what it is? What did we give?
430,000.
430? So are you talking 500?
I would love to go to 500. I was being really cheap and going like 450 or 460. I would love to go to 500.
Just to give some context, the total requested amount was over 800,000.
There's no way we can do that. And I think the more we give, the more that will be requested anyway, right? So we would never be able to meet that, but 500 would be wonderful.
I'd say, can we start with that from the council and see if they can raise some money? You're going to be looking for dust bunnies, but
As
we
Port
appreciate
Kelly
it.
is telling us there's less and less money every year, we're asking you to find more.
So look to find about $70,000 to add to nonprofits. Did you want to make any adjustments to the council budgets or leave them as they are?
I would like to leave them exactly like they have been, and I don't know if I have support on that, and not increase them.
I would be okay with that, as long as we're keeping track and we're not going to all of a sudden not be able to go to the league conference because we've overspent somehow. And so that's my only concern. I get what you're saying, the dollar amounts, but they add up pretty quick if you do more than one conference. But if we keep it at, what is it, 3,000 and 6,000, I'm all right with that.
So, Mayor and Council, it's not 3,000 currently. Right now, there's 800 in each of the council individual employee development budgets, but what there was an additional amount, and I want to say 8,000, but I'm sorry I didn't have it in front of me to reference, but I want to say it was 8,000 that was used for conferences and those types of things, but it was in the collective office budget. So then what we would do is then allocate it after the fact based on who attended what, so it wasn't in each of your individual budgets. But so you know, whatever the majority gives us direction and wants to do, we can work it out that way, but that's how we budgeted it previously.
So it's 800 per council member, more for the mayor, plus the 8,000 budget for all of the council members.
Yeah, and I'm not promising, Mayor, that those numbers are exactly correct, but it was right around there, and I want to say like 2,000 for the mayor or something along those lines.
Thank you. I thought something like that. And since I've been on council, until last year, I was the only one that went on a conference other than the mayor. I mean, as a council member, literally. Nobody else went anywhere. So there hasn't been a lot of travel, is my point. And even for the league conference, we didn't have a lot of council members going to the league conference and staying. So it has worked up till this point, and I know prices have increased.
Well, I think we had 3 of us at the.
Right, at the national.
Yeah, the national last year.
And
That's the
then-
first time till last year.
yeah.
That's what I said. Nobody had traveled until last year.
Yeah, and,
Oh, I'm even thinking the one in Tucson,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
then the one in Atlanta and whatever, yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I think we're a little different council now, from the perspective of that we are committed to educating ourselves and taking the time to do that. So I think if we still went back to 3,000, that would still, I think, individually get us to 2 conferences if we chose to for this year. And maybe there's a little money, Kelly, if you're keeping track. And the mayor, would 3 be enough for you, for your position, or do you think 6? 3?
No, 3 is not enough for the mayor. Not if
Okay.
you're going to go to the conferences that
Right,
are offered.
right. Because there could be DC trips and things like that. So 6, you're good?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably 6.
3 and
but
6, if that works. and 500,000 looking for nonprofits.
Yeah, and I have a question. So what about oops, sorry about that. What about the trips for like sister cities and stuff like that? Where do the funds come?
Those are not covered.
Okay.
Those are out of your pocket if you
Okay,
attend.
so okay. I just thought I'd check on that. So there really isn't nearly as much money for the council as what you thought was there. So,
This council is asking for more money to be added, and when we discussed it at a retreat several months ago, it was asked for discretionary funds to be used, and that's the part that I was having trouble with. I do not want funding sitting here that council members can just ask to use for anything, a pet project, let's say. And I know that happens in cities and towns all over this valley. That's not Gilbert, and that's the part that I was having trouble with.
oh, well, that thought never went in my mind, but now I'm going to think about it. No. I
There's a
never
guitar on
thought
the
of anything like that, but I agree. I mean, I think some of the conferences, I really want to make sure that we're able to go to more if they're going to be informative and help our development and stuff than just the league conference. I mean, I wanted to go to that, but so if something out of the ordinary comes up that would be very beneficial for all of us, can we put something in there that we could talk about that and see if we can find the funds for that, or?
I think the funding's already there. If it came up, it would depend on the cost, obviously, of what the event was and how many people actually wanted to go. And like I said, until last year, nobody on the council was traveling except for the mayor. So it would, and myself as a council member, but otherwise there wasn't anybody traveling. So this hasn't been a major discussion.
That kind of makes me wonder if they even knew they had the ability to do that, did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They chose not to, or they had maybe gone once before I came on council and decided it wasn't something that they wanted to do.
Well, I like Young's suggestion, what she suggested, so I guess it's just somebody that comes up with a motion.
There's no motion, it's study session.
Or-
We just
or
have to
what- or
give
what it
Kelly a
is, yeah.
consensus of what we're looking for. So $500,000 for the nonprofits and to increase the mayor's travel to 6,000, is that what you said, Councilmember Tilke? And council members to 3,000, which I still think is way too much, but I'll take a deep breath and,
Just to make a statement, I'd say that this council is more engaged than
absolutely.
anybody in the past, so. I think
In
it's-
many ways, yes. In many ways, yes. But the town having to pay for it is the issue for me. And that's been the sticking point for me all along. I've paid for all of my trips for the USS Arizona. I've paid for my trips for Sister Cities. I did have the town pay for my hotel for the last Sister Cities trip, but I paid for my airfare. I have paid for almost all of my travel the whole time I've been on council, except for when I went to NLC in the league conference. So it's the fact that the town has to pay for it and the taxpayers are paying for it. And I can remember myself being chewed out by taxpayers for traveling on the town's dime. So I'm trying to be very cautious of that.
Right. At the same time, those same taxpayers are gonna be upset that we spend 70,000 more giving to charity rather than letting them give it to charity.
Yes, you're right, because they wanted to get rid of it in 2015. Yes, that's my problem. I know that the way we do it through the town is the best way for our nonprofits to receive the funding for what we need done specifically as Gilbert. That's how I see it. Councilmember Kaprowski?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe wrap up the conversation on this since unless we have other, I think, more pressing budget comments, but from what I heard, a majority of us are comfortable with giving Kelly direction to find an additional $70,000 for the nonprofit budget, and we are willing for some of that budget to come out from the mayor and council's newly discussed allocation, which was discussed at a retreat last year. And well, you'll probably have to look at other buckets because that wasn't sufficient for that full 70,000.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Councilmember Torgerson, do you have more comments? No. Councilmember Buckley, do you have more comments on the budget? Any other comments or questions on budget with Kelly? Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Great presentation. Next, we're moving on to the, Gilbert Parks and Recreation Master Plan Executive Summary. Presentation.
They're getting in place. Mayor Peterson and members of the council, thank you so much for this opportunity. You have been hearing from us for the past 18 months about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So I personally am very excited to bring this to you today. My name is Lane Graham. I'm the Recreation Manager for Parks and Recreation Department. I have had the privilege of leading the department through the master plan. I say privilege with a smile still. I would not have been able to do it without our entire department. So I just want to give a big thanks to the entire department, as well as the committee. So Laura Young, Heidi Kamish, and Denise Murden, who have made it look easy and seamless through this process and stood by my side. So, all right. The Parks Board, Parks Advisory Board, if any of them are here, also just want to give a big thanks to them. They've been extremely supportive and involved actively throughout the process. As you know, the 10-year plan that we currently have was developed in 2014, and that was a unique plan that saw Gilbert through a lot of growth and expansion. We find this plan to be unique as well, that this plan will potentially see Gilbert through the build-out of our town, so from 2024 to 2034. The development of this plan started in November of 2022. Feels like a very long time ago. And we selected a consultant team of J2 Design, Design Lab, and Barry Dunn. Today you'll be hearing from Barry Dunn and lead you through the executive summary, which I did send you in an email to be able to preview as well. I have some nice handouts that I'll bring up while he presents and hits all the high points of our executive summary, what the department has been through. Our mission from the very beginning was to, as you are aware, was to hear from as many people in the community as we possibly could. We're very proud of our over 60,000 touch points that were received in our community outreach. And like I said, it was an entire department. We also wanted everyone in the town and in our department to know that our Parks and Rec department was going through this and to provide input. So from February until July, we were kind of a traveling road show and had attended HOA summer parties. We attended OSO, a night of giveaways and engaging with people at OSO. We gave away free ice cream at 6 different locations in Gilbert. We had a 17-foot traveling mural that we took to all of our neighborhood parks. We had a goal of meeting the community where they were, and I felt we were very successful in that and getting those 60,000 touch points. So we're very proud of that. This plan will guide our department in decision-making for the next 10 years. So I'm excited for you to hear where we're at, and Barry Dunn guide you through this process to see the executive summary, but also to hear your feedback and your input on this plan. So with that, I will bring up our consultant team lead from Barry Dunn, Jason Gink, and then I will hand you out a printed summary if you didn't have time to look at it. Okay, you ready, Jason?
Thank you, Lane. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you all again, and really, what an exciting day. And I do appreciate you rescheduling the entire study session around Parks and Recreation today. Thank you. Obviously, just kidding. I just find it interesting at these opportunities going through these planning processes, I get the honor to present to you, whereas it's your entire staff. Your entire staff has worked so hard in this planning process. I get to lead our practice at Barry Dunn, which is cool, but my most favorite job is to be a project manager. I mentioned I get to lead it because we do hundreds of these projects all over the nation, and I want to tell you, I have never seen the amount of time, innovation, openness, support, and even challenge from your team to make sure we're doing the very best for the town of Gilbert. And so that just makes me really proud, and I wanted to make sure that I conveyed that. And Lane certainly already mentioned our local team members as well, the J2 and the Design Lab, but again, we couldn't do it without that full consulting team support. So I think what you're getting handed out now is a copy, printed copy of the executive summary. Okay, awesome. And the full document, so outstanding. So what I'm going to do right now is just kind of walk you through the journey a little bit, but really look at some key highlights. And you've seen some of this before, so I'm not going to spend too much time going through the full slide deck, but I'm happy to pause and emphasize some key areas. But from a project, an overall project and service area, these are the key areas that we analyzed. Essentially, your team challenged us to do about everything that we do to analyze communities to make sure we're doing the very best in a comprehensive approach to review all of these service areas. And I'll talk about some of those areas and some of those service areas we highlight through the presentation. But Plan Where You Play was the brand, was the creative innovation, actually specifically created by a staff member. Wayne, was that you?
No, can't take credit for that.
Okay. Well, your staff team created that. We try to inspire, and it's certainly just a way to pop and hopefully connect with the community and organizations to be clear about what the planning process is about. And in fact, it's about the idea and the imagination, the inspiration to find better ways to play and future ways to play in Gilbert. And I thought, again, staff did a tremendous job on creating an innovative and unique brand and connection for your community. So there are some key project milestones. There's quite a bit more outlined in the full project document, but essentially starting, believe it or not, November 22, and I had to triple check that. But that's how long we've been on this journey together. And I just highlighted some key milestones with your advisory board, with council, just to showcase how much time and effort you've put into this. And again, thank you for the one-on-ones that we had the opportunity to do. It was a pleasure seeing you at the fall retreat, at the foundation events. Saw many of you there, out in the community at all the outreach. It's really inspiring to see, because I know you have huge jobs, and taking that extra time was really meaningful for our team. So thank you for doing that. And so I do want to really focus on community and organization centered. So this isn't just hearing the voices of the community, which you did, but it's also hearing the voices across your organization and making sure we're thinking across the entire organization, we're coming up with our recommendations. But your team challenged us. In fact, I think it was actually publicly on the fly for the folks who are at the foundation meeting, foundation event, sorry. I was challenged publicly, I think on the hot mic, from Robert. He said, yeah, Barry Dunn is already committed to doubling the most engagement they've ever seen in the community. And that sat out over 30, yeah, you're saying you remember that. He's like, right, Jason? And I'm standing there, I said, yeah, okay. And I knew what that was, and that was 30,000. It was another organization. But in fact, as you know, by now, when you just heard that, you've eclipsed 62,000 touch points in your community. And the field across Parks and Recreation really has their eye on Gilbert to how do you do that? And really the secret sauce is your staff. I know I keep saying that again and again, but when people say things like, hey, Jason, we really want to get all this community and organization engagement, just like Gilbert did, I said, well, great, but here's how you get there. And by the way, they have the regular jobs to do too. But we wanted to make sure that we are providing the best recommendations and the comprehensive data with your team, and so we certainly appreciate how much they were involved. And there's some key key shares there on just some of the highlights of the community engagement. And Lane already mentioned many of these, so I won't repeat them, but I will say some of the maybe ones that stuck out to me were the creative and innovative canvas that was developed, customized for Gilbert, that went on the road all over the community. The playground workshop with about, I think, about 150 or so youth, 143, there it is, youth designed playgrounds to give ideas of their future Gilbert. And just really impressive and exciting. We even had news coverage, as you probably might know. A local former news anchor was covering the story of your planning process, which was unique and awesome. So yes, there's a few slides here on your focus groups. There's a lot, so I won't read them all to you, but I just wanted to be clear here again, because I think this is about 4 slides in a row on your focus groups, how willing your community was to give their voice. Yes, we went to the people, meaning going to pop-up opportunities, holding virtual things like that, but to see how many focus groups wanted to have a voice in conversation, and again, to your staff thinking global and saying, who should we involve? And who can we involve? And you could see, I'll just mention the sectors: outdoor recreation, natural resources, adaptive recreation, sports and athletics. and I'll slow down a little bit on each slide if you want to look at any of the names, but seniors, active adults, businesses, public health and safety, aquatics. And there's more, and I'll pause for a second. Youth and teens, arts and culture, moms groups and nonprofits. These are all the groups that I'm sure you already know who these folks are, and you gave us the opportunity to interact with them. I also should say that your community is very open to having conversations. I think one funny memory I have for sure is at an event, and we were talking about Gilbert, and we're about 5 minutes into giving input and things. Oh, but I don't really live in Gilbert, but I say that I do. Yeah, because I love it here, and I just love and we'll get to this in a minute in the branding, but I just love it here. But is it okay if I give input? Of course it's okay if you give input, and we talked, right? But that was one of my favorite moments. And then coalition members, your P3s, you guys do some of the most remarkable work in public-private partnerships in park and recreation in the United States. We know that. We use Gilbert as a benchmark for other organizations to consider how to do it right. Of course, your event promoters, you do so many events, your schools and your partner agreements. And I think this is the last one, don't worry. Higher education and program providers and instructors. So again, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all those groups and representatives from those groups to have a voice and a say into the future of Gilbert specific to Parks and Recreation. By the way, I also would like to say the digital team here, the town manager's office, Dawn most notably, on all the project meetings. I think so many bridges have been built even stronger. Not to say they weren't already there. I want to be real clear about that. You guys do great work. But new voices, new opportunities to build off that marketing that your team worked so hard on, I thought was really, really impressive. So yeah, thank you to your team. Your drive, your hospitality, your people. And I have, I don't know, probably over 1,000 photos together with your team. So I just picked a few. You see the kids' workshop there, a couple of the events. But your hospitality to make sure we did this right, to challenge the norm, to make sure we're working extra hard for your community was very much inspirational. As a matter of fact, I have to say it, one of my colleagues, Ryan, is in the audience here. He's actually monitoring my time. Don't worry, I am monitoring my time, and he's going to hold me accountable. Ryan's one of the most innovative professionals in the field and been in the public sector for over 20 years. And one of the reasons he heard about Barry Dunn was, in fact, because of what we were doing at Gilbert. The entire nation is talking about what your team is doing here for Parks and Recreation. So on to our strategic initiative. We take all this information, and in fact, with a full plan document and all the appendices, we didn't challenge you with all the appendices because there's a lot of information in there. Lane, I don't have the exact number, but I'm going to say north of 700 pages with all the supporting data for your staff to use for the years to come. But what you do have electronically and also in your hands is the full plan document as well as the executive summary. And we talk about strategic initiatives essentially being, okay, great, after all this is said and done, what are the pockets, what are the buckets, what are the focus areas that we want to look at? And here they are. So you're going to hear just kind of a highlight of these, and then I'm going to go into a brief explanation in the following slides. Preserving our existing assets. And when I walked in here today, I heard you talking about that from the budgeting process, taking care of what you have. Gilbert is one of the most innovative parks and rec, and across the organization, innovation is a key theme and a commitment. Creating a connected community. People want to be connected more, both actually through things like sidewalks and paths and multi-use areas, but also through social experiences. They want to hear more about your story and continuing to build a great momentum of your communications and digital team. We want to ensure equitable service, and you guys are doing, again, a remarkable job. Certified Autism Center is one example, but there's so much more. We even did a podcast for a national audience with your team because of the work you're doing here around inclusivity. That doesn't mean there's a lot more to do. There always is, and we have recommendations around that, and we call that Opportunities for All, but you guys are doing some great work. And then developing our team. All these services that we talk about, obviously they can't happen without having the great public servants that you have across the town. And something just happened. Oh, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Is that how Ryan was monitoring you? He shut your slideshow down?
Yeah, he's like, I got it. Oh.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
We'll start over, just in case you missed it. I'm kidding. I'll advance through it.
Take two.
Sorry, guys, I apologize. I don't know what happened. I'm sure it was my fault. So then moving past to go to some specific examples of what do we mean about preserving existing assets. And I won't go through all of these, but I will say that from our Siskiyou Valley survey, nearly 80% of your community does support putting money back into supporting your current infrastructure. That's probably no surprise to you, but we have the research to show it. And we talk about maintaining and preserving, and to make sure the quality that you have now, the level of service that you're producing now is sustained as you continue to grow. And that's really what we're talking about. Excelling through innovation. You know, we continue to hear that theme, and here's an example of a think tank that we did. Your team challenged us, and we said, you know, let's go beyond locally, let's do the region, let's do the state, let's do the nation to say, you know, what are the challenges for Gilbert and what are we seeing across the nation? And in fact, that's what you're seeing for the emerging trends. And so we know from your mission and your commitment that you're bold, that you have a culture of creativity, and we wanted to make sure that was very much a theme of our planning efforts and our recommendations for the years to come. Creating a connected community. I mentioned that hometown feel, and I gave you one example of that, but that happened other times. People, you know, every community that we work with, in fact, Ryan actually leads a lot of this across the nation, is branding and marketing. Your brand is Gilbert, guys. I got to tell you, at least from what I heard. I'm not pretending to know more than you guys. You guys are the experts. I'm not. But the secret sauce of Gilbert is Gilbert. That hometown balanced feel with smart progressive growth that you guys are doing. Everyone seems to want to live here and even pretend that they do live here, apparently, from some of our interactions. So it was awesome. They want to have destination facilities, and they want to have unique experiences, and you guys do a lot of that. 93% of residents want to have multi-use and connectivity and paths and trails. And I know several council members talked about that specifically during and cross-department in the multi-use trail and transportation master plan, which we looked at as well. Sharing our story. Every town that we work with and community always says, hey, we wish we knew more about what was going on. So that every community says that. But we do think that we would recommend building off the momentum that your team has built with all these great connections and continuing and growing and telling that story about that secret sauce that Gilbert has, because you guys truly and honestly have something very special going on here. Opportunities for all. While you guys, the team does you have tremendous parks and recreation resources. That being said, we know that we've analyzed your entire system. We've identified gaps in access and equitable services, walkability to parks, walkability to public spaces, and we know there's an opportunity to improve that. We're not saying doing that overnight, but we're saying as you develop, as you grow, there is opportunities to have more connectivity. But again, not just in the physical side of sidewalks and multi-use trails, there's things along those lines, but also on the programmatic side too. And we talk about opportunities for all, and we've developed a toolkit with your team to help guide them on moving forward with greater inclusivity efforts. And then I mentioned developing our team. The only way all these services happen, as we know, in local government is with great team members, which you have. So what we're really talking about is just as the population grows, what is it going to take to maintain our current level of service? What does that mean? And what is our level of service? So part of our recommendations is certainly those. And we looked at benchmarks, we looked at the operations, we did an organization assessment to really understand how you're conducting your business, and came up with recommendations for your team to consider. Then talking specifically about capital high priority recommendations. We essentially did an audit of your system. We looked at the quality of your amenities hand in hand with your staff, facilities. Certainly with some of that, granted you have a larger facility-wide plan that's underway, was underway at the time, and then but park-specific amenities and rank those. And we have hundreds and hundreds of points of data of other systems across the United States, so we can do a good comparable to give you an idea of what the quality of the system is. Generally speaking, your system is in good shape. That being said, opportunities for higher priority, both from, this is a combination of organization and community input and priority, as well as the assessment of your conditions and gaps of your services. Things like park development, you see as a top priority in developing your parks, and you saw on a previous slide, creating that increased access to services by developing your parks. And a host of other things there. You're probably not surprised to see the word pickleball there. Sorry, every community we work with that pickleball comes up. So in fact, you're going to see that there too. But that's awesome. You guys have some, I know that some of your constituents, they're up before, the crack of dawn to be waiting in time to get on that court first, because that's how much they enjoy those experiences. And then other priorities, these are also medium capital priorities, are things like your skate parks, your nature centers. We've had people say, you know what, build a second riparian park. I mean, literally, it was like, okay. I see some head nods, you've heard that too, right? They love it so much, they want another one. More arts and performances and events. People, you talk about these lifetime experiences that people have and are impacting their families. Those opportunities to gather. I love that Gilbert sign that you have, and again, your brand. People want Gilbert imaging in those experiences in their lives, and they want to showcase that through their photos and posts, and I think it's awesome. Just a few more slides. I know I'm getting a little short on time, I believe, here, but field needs. While you still have to balance sort of the equitable access to general parks and recreation, you are still known, like Cactus Yards, as a massive regional destination and an economic impact from a bringing in travel tourism, big time. When I go to the airport a lot to see you guys from Denver, which is where I'm based, I did, by the way, go to grad school here in the wonderful state of Arizona. I just had to put that plug in there. But anyway, one of the schools, I won't mention which one. That might be a fight, right? But in fact, your community does love also multi-use areas, multi-use sports fields. So you do have a deficiency there, and we're also recommending you expand on that. Next steps, and I'm getting to a closure of my presentation. We want to hear your study session feedback today. Take any initial questions we can, answer whatever we can today. If not, come back to you with those answers. We want to bring back the opportunity, hopefully, to, at your consideration, adopt a plan. Implementation workshops, we're actually getting started on that tomorrow. We have a 5-hour session with your staff, and Ryan and I, as part of our service and as facilitators, we do these types of work, this type of work all over the nation. We help your staff develop their first 18-month work plan around moving forward the master plan efforts. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. Not to say it's finalized, not to say we certainly want to hear all our input, but we have to kind of get started, start thinking along those lines. So just want to make you aware of next steps. So that concludes my presentation, but I just wanted to emphasize again, the inspiring work that you guys are doing, how you went through this process, how committed your staff was. The industry has never seen anything like this. I want to be real clear about that. Parks and Recreation, and many of us on my team members, our faculty members at NRPA's Director School, Revenue Schools, you name it. We host NRPA's Technology Summit, all that stuff, have never seen what you guys are doing. And I know we didn't get perfect, I know that, and I want to hear from you, but I just can't get enough kudos to your entire leadership team, as well as how open your community was with the planning process. Thank you.
Wow, I don't even know what to say, Jason.
Right?
That was amazing. Well, I love the Gilbert secret sauce. I think I might start using that. I don't know. I like that. Thank you for that presentation. I remember the day I met you. We were at Freestone Rec Center. It's the first time we met in person, and thank you for all the work that you've done, and congratulations on hitting that crazy, insane milestone that Robert gave you. And thank you for all the kudos for our team, because I think that they're some of the best, but it's so great to hear from other people that they are some of the best, and we appreciate hearing that. And thanks for all the hard work on this presentation. And any questions, comments from the council? Councilmember Kaprowski?
Thank you, Jason, for the presentation, and thank you to the Gilbert team. I know that everyone did a lot of heavy lifting to make this plan such a big success, and I think this was really one of those ideal planning efforts that has now providing us as leaders and the town with direction on how to move forward, and we've already had some conversations on some of that in terms of funding and implementation. I really appreciated the fact that we had our youth engaged in the planning effort. And I think looking forward, what I'm going to want to see is how do we show them that we made change and that they had a hand in change before they get too old to enjoy it. So I know that's a balance between the funding and the implementation, but I think that would be another key factor of success, is that implementation within a time period where the people that were involved in the plan can then see those changes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you, Councilmember Kowalski, and thank you for being there that day. Yours was the most elaborate and most amazing table, extensive build effort there. When we got back, I think one of my kids said, well, did you build the playground that I designed? I'm like, oh, they really thought that they were providing that input. So I think it is really important to us that as we're looking at Desert Sky and other playgrounds, that we have a youth group that's involved in those decisions and guiding it, because they are the users. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Lane. Councilmember Tilkey.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a great presentation, and it's something we've been waiting for a while, and it is really exciting. Every time I look at opportunities that we go out to our public, you know, we thought we hit the top of the peak with our general plan communication, and then you guys came along and blew that away, and so we've set really high goals for our community, but it's wonderful because I think it speaks to who we are as a community, that so many people wanted to be part of this. I know that, I think it was at our retreat, we had a brief update on this, and one of the sections that maybe we don't do so great on is the resources that we have available to be able to provide all of those programs that people want, or the new playgrounds, all of these things. And you know, as a community matures, it'll be your turn, right? You know, I think that for the last 30 years, we've been so invested in streets and, you know, water infrastructure, and sometimes parks gets the back seat. And so I think it is time for you all to be recognized for everything that you've done, to knowing that we have limited resources and that you've been able to be recognized nationally for all the great things we're doing. I think it's amazing. I think the only thing that I have is that I know that the aquatic center keeps coming up, and I thought that as a council that we had agreed that we're not in the aquatic business. It doesn't mean that we can't be innovative with P3 programs or different things like that, but I just don't want to create the impression that we're going to build a huge pool down in South Gilbert that's going to be town-owned, and it's going to be an aquatic center that, you know, that is beyond what maybe people have had in their minds. But I think we need to continue to examine how we can partner to get these amenities. But I think South Gilbert is getting their own right now. I know for the longest time, everybody's thought, you know, only North Gilbert got parks and whatever. But what we're seeing in the north is that they're aging parks, but amazing things happening in South Gilbert. So I don't want South Gilbert to think that they're not being taken care of. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mayor, Councilmember Tilkey, we really appreciate that. And I know we've had the conversation. I think what really today is more about is that culmination of what the public feedback was. But I think we were very careful when you read through the executive summary, when you read for the full document. We really did not want to lock council in anything from any direction, more so of here's what we heard. And I think we'll continue to share that story as we know what council's direction moving forward is. And I think even from our past conversations, there's still a lot of opportunities we have to provide some of those facilities in a different way or through partnerships, but knowing, you know, going over the priority list together was helpful. And I think in some ways we may have jumped ahead because we had to have that conversation before the master plan was finished, but we had some of the information already. But really we made sure that we left it more open for the future conversations with council and boards, so that it didn't necessarily tie council to anything from the master plan.
Thanks, Robert. Councilmember Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mayor. Being the town liaison for Parks and Rec, I just knew that we would do 2 times better than any other city out there. Now, I want to thank you guys for your hard work. I remember one of my first meetings when I got elected was to sit down with you guys, and you were telling me about this, and I was like, holy cow, that's a lot of work to do. And to see it occur over this last year plus, was amazing. And hats off to everyone on the team, because you guys did an amazing job and really went out of your way to include everybody. And I want to thank the consulting firm also. You guys did an incredible job.
Councilmember Anderson? Vice Mayor Anderson?
Again, thank you very much for the work you've done. I am a little bit concerned. We seem to have spent a lot of the space in the master plan itself talking about a thing called opportunities for all. And I hope that's not an indication that for some reason that internally or externally that we are in some way engaged in some discriminatory practices in the town. That when we spend that much time talking about that, which in other terms, other people refer to it as DEI, it's something that concerns me. And I hope we're not going down a path that, a master plan for parks and recreation in our community, I think, needs to answer the question, what's the value of parks and open space and recreation programs? And we should spend more time showing the value of it, whether it's health reasons or there's economic values for having it. And I would spend more time in the plan on that than I would on this opportunities for all toolkit that's outlined in the plan. It takes a lot of space in the plan. And so I'm kind of concerned a little bit about that, Robert.
Yeah, Mayor Peterson, Vice Mayor Anderson, we really appreciate that feedback. We can take a look at that. I think, we really tried to hit all those 10 topics that we mentioned. When we talk about opportunities for all within Parks and Recreation and our plan in particular, really what we were focusing on is the diversity of programming from the standpoint of, how much of our programming has that allocation for adaptive recreation or seniors or, the playgrounds being shaded and, those types of opportunities to make sure that, in Arizona, having the facilities available with shade on a playground or having those adaptive recreation classes be available, how long people had to travel to be able to reach some of those locations or classes or parks facilities, really where we spent most of our time when we talked about the opportunities for all section. But I think it's a very great point and something we can take a look at because it's just a piece of the larger puzzle of the master plan.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot more toxic, a lot less toxic if we were right straightforward and said it's access. We want people to have access. Everybody to have access, not trying to achieve some purpose in providing that access. The other question I had, you probably already can guess what I'm going to ask about because I didn't see it in the plan, is the education center in the 10-year plan. I didn't see it. I saw some improvements to the other two sites, but I didn't see the education center.
Yeah, Mayor Peterson, Vice Mayor Anderson, that is within our capital improvement 10-year plan, and I think where it showed up is we know that the Nature Center, Recreation Center was one of the top, requests that we received from the community. So in our minds, that was part of the decision-making with elevating the Riparian Education Center and something that we even have an RFP out for right now for design services. So it's definitely at the top of mind for the department. We know it's a top of mind for the community. And knowing that those design services are going to be kicking off, we'll get those RFPs back and hopefully start that process in the fall. It's definitely at the top of our list and was one of the top of the list in the priorities, but probably may have not shown up from a 10-year plan perspective in terms of a budgeted cost, if I'm remembering that page correctly. But we can absolutely still add that to it as one of those priorities if we miss that.
I was very happy to see the improvements to the other two sites that are included in there. That's great. Thank you.
No, thank you. We will take a look at that as a team before we come back to council for approval.
Councilmember Buckley?
Okay, so I want to try to clear something up about, and I'm going to continue to be an advocate for a rec center and a possible pool for South Gilbert. I think that maybe we have something crossed a little bit, and from what I remember and recall is that we were going to leave it there so that we don't have to start over from the talk part. And so when that comes up, then we can still, even whether it be, the 3 years I'm still left here or for the next council coming in, that we can still talk about that. And I want to make sure that I'm correct in my thinking, is that because it is in there and it was left in for that purpose.
No, absolutely. And I think those projects are there really to show what the community feedback was with what Gilbert was looking for with all the extensive outreach. And our goal was to be transparent, not only collecting the data, but sharing the responses that we received back with Gilbert, since they were so forthcoming with us and having those conversations. But it leaves it open to discussion, with council. So when we go over future priorities, and I'm sure we'll be doing that sometime soon again when we start to break down that list of priorities that we had. Council, the team, management, everyone will have plenty of time to break down those priorities within those projects, but we haven't necessarily removed anything. This is just showing the engagement and what the community requested. So still a lot of conversations to be had at how we want to approach the future development.
Correct. I just want to make sure everybody understands why it was left in there and why we're doing that. And, that area, of course, that's the area I live in. A lot of the residents kind of feel like we've just been left behind, because we don't have all the services and all the restaurants that North Gilbert has. And I think that's really important. And the rec center and the pool, if I remember correctly, because that's what all the residents are telling me, that's one of their top priorities that they want for the kids. And that's a huge family area out there. So, all right. And hopefully, do you understand why that was left in?
Mayor, is that
Kathy,
okay?
yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Tilby.
I think as Robert was mentioning, this is just the master plan to provide us input, what residents said.
Correct.
My comment was that I believe that that I'm open to P3 opportunities, which are private partnerships, public partnerships, sorry. That I don't believe that we as a council have come to the decision that we would be in the aquatic business. In fact, I thought we said no. So that's a different conversation for when we get into the CIP project. This is just a report out of what our community was saying. That's it.
Well,
So,
right. But I want to make sure that their voice is still there. And what they're wanting is still brought up and not just put aside somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think a good interpretation is, I think a lot of times it's hard to keep up with a 700-page master plan. So that was also the intent of why we wanted to do a executive summary, with Barry Dunn and J2 and Design Lab, but that was more of a 20-page synopsis of how you could encapsulate a, 18-month plan into 20 pages. It just shows some of the highlights to Gilbert. So I think, hopefully what we can do is be able to share those highlights with the community. They can see some of the needs, some of the things that they requested, to know that they were heard in a shorter format where they can understand that, but understand there's still future decisions to be made and didn't necessarily lock in any decisions for it.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Councilmember Torgerson?
I just wanted to reiterate what Scott was saying. I am tired of pointing something out as though we have a problem. And it turns me off every time I hear it, and I'm less likely to have open ears the more times I'm told that we have a problem. We don't have a problem. In fact, we should be hiring people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. We should be providing services for people regardless. And the more I see DEI, MEI, ESG, the further I recoil from everything that's said. So I would like you to take a look at that and see how we're being inclusive of everybody, not just pointing out a few people that you feel are not included.
I'm going to comment, Robert, before you say anything. When it comes to parks, I never even thought any of this, what Vice Mayor Anderson and what Councilmember Torgerson brought up. I thought specifically Gilbert Regional and what we've done with the different ability park there, meaning there are different types of activities for different users, children that have different abilities, and the fact that we do Truckapalooza and the first hour is completely quiet for those that have maybe issues with sensory type situations, or the Gilbert Symphony where we're doing the separate section for sensory again. Those are the types of things that I thought of when I heard that. And I think I'm very conscious of it these days too. But those are the types of things that I thought of when I heard this from Jason and saw this in the presentation. I didn't think anything other than that. And I think, especially as a community, and your department in particular, who has been autism certified, and as the community is working for the dementia-friendly certification, and the clerk's office and Gilbert PD and Gilbert Fire are autism certified, I think that speaks to volumes that we're looking at at our community from a different perspective. We are a younger community. We know we have over 80,000 kids in this community. They're using their parks, and everybody has a different ability. And that's what I looked at when I saw that category.
Yeah, and Mayor Peterson, member of council, we really appreciate the comments and respect to that section, and we'll take the time before it comes back to take a deeper look into that and make sure that we're sort of meeting the intention of council with it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember Tilkey, microphone on.
Thanks, Mayor. In regards to that, I believe what we're discussing is opportunities for all. I think that was just a different way of saying, and I'm just going to give Mayor Daniels the credit because I know she said a lot, that we provide a community for all abilities and all ages. And I think that's what you were talking about. That's what I thought this was about. I just pulled up that page very quickly, but there might be a couple of words in there that if somebody's very sensitive to that, they may maybe take the wrong meaning, and so maybe that we should just take a look at it, and because I know that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is providing parks, programming, amenities for everybody in our community, no matter what their ability is or their age, and for families, you know, everybody. And so I think that was the intent, so maybe there's just a few words you can look at.
No, absolutely. We'll take a look at that prior to it coming back to council as well.
Vice Mayor Anderson.
I'm sure that was the intent for what programs that we offer, but if you read the full master plan, it talks about internal needs also in the staff, and I think that goes farther than access to all, so that's what I'm concerned with, and I hope that you do have an opportunity to address that.
Councilmember Torgerson.
And that is the beauty of this council, is there's different points of view. And I'm seeing this much more like Scott sees it. And I've seen enough that I just would like us to really look at people as individuals, not as classes or anything else at this point. And I'm seeing what he's seeing. So just, that's all I have to say about it today.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to close up with saying, first, Jason brought up cactus yards again in this presentation, and I want to say to Patrick, to Chris, to the team that was here when we chose to take cactus yards back under the town of Gilbert, thank you and congratulations for that. I mean, now it's been about 6 years about that, right? 5 years? Okay, I was pushing it. And we have seen so many rewards in that time that after we chose to do that, and that was not an easy lift for any of us in the decision to make at the time that we did it. So thank you for that. And let's give a shout out to Bob Grasso because he was instrumental in that situation too. But thank you for that, and thank you for making sure that Cactus Yards runs so well and that it's a highlight especially in a presentation like this, right? It's one of our older parks at this point, and for it to still be a highlight at this point, I'm really pleased for that. And thanks for all you did for this presentation, Jason, all of the work that you have put in and continue to put in. Big kudos to Lane, because I know that this was a huge lift for you. And I especially liked the free ice cream day. I went to Free Cookie Dough and Peterson's Ice Cream that day and stopped by. And the residents were so happy to be out there and just commenting and talking and telling us everything that they loved about Gilbert, just like Jason said. They just wanted to tell us everything that was great about Gilbert and why they loved living here. And I'll tell you a little secret. I've been looking for a new home in another city, And I went to speak to a salesperson, and the salesperson said to me, in the nicest possible way, "Why would you want to move out of Gilbert?" She said, "I would give anything to move to Gilbert." She lives in another East Valley city, I'll just say. And I said, "Well, I appreciate that, but grandson, new grandson, 2 words, right? New grandson." So just know that everybody loves being here. And even the people that don't live here want to talk about Gilbert and how great it is. I love that story. And there are so many people that want to be Gilbertonians too because of everything that you do every single day. So thank you for all of that. Appreciate it. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we move on to our next 2 topics. Thanks, everybody. Okay, everybody, I think we're back from our break, bringing us back to our study session. I see Chief Solberg standing at the podium, and, oh, it looks like Chris Payne has joined him. So our next presentation will be a discussion on an ordinance related to brass knuckles.
I missed the whole intro, sorry.
Sorry, Chief, I just said you and Chris were here to do a presentation on a discussion on an ordinance for brass knuckles.
Yes, thank you. And I believe we have the presentation in front of you. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about two proposed ordinances. Us and Chandler, the city of Chandler, are both working simultaneously on these two ordinances. In Chandler, and in our initial notice, we listed it as parental responsibilities, I think is the term that.
That's on the unruly gathering ordinance. It's
unruly gathering.
The purpose of that is parental responsibility.
Parental responsibility. Yeah. So in the presentation, I focus on unruly gatherings, but I want to make that connection that is what we're talking about here tonight. But this is, when we get into the unruly gatherings, it doesn't matter whether it's parents or not, it's whoever responsible for that property, just to make that distinction. And we thought this was a little more clear. So tonight, or this afternoon, we'll go over a review of what the other jurisdictions have been doing and are planning to do, a review of the proposed ordinance for unruly gatherings, and then a review of our incidents involving brass knuckles, and then the proposed ordinance on brass knuckles, and then the next steps for us to follow. First of all, review of other jurisdictions' ordinances. In Chandler, as I mentioned, very similar to what we are proposing. In Chandler, they currently have an ordinance and they're looking to update their ordinance. They have an existing ordinance already. So with their unruly gathering ordinance, I believe this month in May, they will be reviewing those changes. And theirs will be gathering of persons or on any private or public property, including property used to conduct business, which constitutes a threat to public peace, health, safety, or general welfare. And it holds the property owner responsible for any unruly gathering on one of those properties. It gives them the ability, if they declared an unruly gathering, for the police to abate the property to within reasonable lawful means to basically get everyone out of there, out of the party. It includes civil penalties up to $2,500 and a criminal up to 180 days in jail, 3 years of probation, and $2,500 fine. In Tempe, in June of 13, they passed their ordinance on nuisance parties and unlawful gatherings. Very similar, holds owner, tenant, guests responsible for holding or attending a nuisance party or unlawful gathering. It escalates police service fees are assessed so they can recoup some of their police fees when responding to a nuisance party. In Glendale, they have had since beginning of last year, January of 23, very similar to Tempe, almost the exact same verbiage. In Scottsdale, in 2021, they revised their nuisance parties and unlawful gatherings ordinance. And with that, it's owner responsible for permitting a nuisance party or unlawful gathering. It's civil, anywhere from $250 up to $2,000. After notice, that fee goes up, so a repeat offense, the fee goes up. Penalties may be reduced if owner installs noise mitigation software or cameras, attends to best practices on rentals, and post-conduct rules. In Goodyear, unruly gatherings, in 2022, they updated theirs to show it holds owner, tenant, guests responsible for holding or attending a nuisance party or unlawful gathering. Once again, civil penalties from $1,000 to $2,500. Posting of notice is required. Flagstaff, nuisance parties, that's been on the books for 9 years. Holds owner, tenant, guest responsible for holding or attending a nuisance party, again, civil penalties. Tucson, theirs has been on the books for about 7 years. Posting or premises required each time an unruly gathering occurs. Holds owner, tenant, guest responsible for holding or attending a nuisance party, again, civil penalties, plus service fees, recouping costs for the police response. And in Prescott Valley, underage drinking, nuisance parties, holds owner, tenant, guest responsible for holding or attending a nuisance party. Again, several penalties ranging from $100 to $1,500. Posting a property upon third and subsequent police responses. So into our proposed ordinance. Unruly gatherings. So this, I'm not going to read this whole screen to you, but these are in the definitions that are from the ordinance. Obviously, a juvenile indicating someone who is 17 years of age and under, and then a minor is considered someone who's 18 to 20. So when we talk about minor in possession of alcohol, minor in possession of drugs, that category that you have. They're of age, they're an adult, but they are under the legal age to possess those items that are legal in the state. Our definition of property, definition of owner, who is responsible for the property, and to point out the unruly gathering, that's really the who, how, and what. What is an unruly gathering? An unruly gathering is a party, gathering, or event on any public or private property, including property used to conduct business, in a manner which causes a disturbance of the reasonable enjoyment of private or public property by any person or persons. Such disturbances include, but are not limited to, excessive noise or traffic, obstruction of sidewalks or streets by crowds or vehicles, drinking in public, the use or possession of illegal drugs, the possession or consumption of alcohol or marijuana by minors, fighting, violence, serious disruptive behavior, and disturbing the peace and or littering. Now keep in mind, as I read through that list, a lot of those sound like other violations, and they are. So this is just this ordinance gives us something else to charge. Perhaps we don't have enough probable cause or evidence to support a criminal charge, or we do, and we can charge minor in possession of alcohol, plus with this ordinance, if it was an unruly gathering, we could charge that on the homeowner as well. So with the ordinance, it shall be unlawful for a responsible person to permit an unruly gathering. It shall be unlawful for any person to engage in any conduct causing or gathering to be unruly. Again, we have the abatement clause, as the others had, which a police officer may abate an unruly gathering by reasonable means, including but not limited to a citation of violators under applicable ordinances or state statutes, and dispersal of the persons attending the gathering. It holds the property owner responsible for unlawful for a reasonable person to intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly permit an unruly gathering. Subsequent unlawful gathering occurs on the property if within 180 days of the prior unlawful gathering notice. So a subsequent charge could impact what you guys are going to talk about here in a minute with the penalties. So liable for expense of emergency response. So whether PDU or fire or any other response from the town, we can seek reimbursement of fees. That's hourly wages, equipment, whatever it takes for us to mitigate an unruly party. That amount is not set. That is a decision the council will need to make on what that cap should be, if capped, or you could leave it based on actual expenses incurred. Penalties is another option for you to discuss tonight. Progressive civil penalties, as I mentioned in several of the other cities, you can have an escalating fee of, let's say, $250, $500, whatever amount you choose, and it can escalate on based on additional violations. You can have criminal penalties and make it a misdemeanor, and therefore you could have a crime on the first incident, or a hybrid approach where you have a civil, more than likely civil penalty for your first offense, and then if you had a second offense within 180 days, that could be criminal. There are some procedural things to consider when you do that as well. If I go to an unruly gathering on Saturday night, we declare it unruly gathering, we do a civil citation, and then 2 weeks later, there's another party that we have to conclude that first offense, whether you go criminal or whether you go civil, we have to have a ruling or payment of the fine to show that they've acknowledged that first one before we could turn that second violation into a crime. So if we are still waiting for adjudication on the first incident, we would treat the second as civil until we get confirmation that it's criminal, that the first one's been adjudicated. then we could basically long form or submit a criminal citation against the homeowner for that second one. So we'll worry about those details depending on what you guys do, but there's a process for doing either one. So that's another decision for you all to make tonight is civil penalties, criminal, or a combination of the two. And then the other remedies is just a reminder, as I said on the last slide, we have other options, disorderly conduct, assault, minor in possession. There's a lot of other laws and ordinances that we would use in conjunction with those, with any violations as appropriate. Do you want me to continue on, or do you want to discuss this before we move to the next?
I would say let's discuss this one before we move on to the next, please. Any comments or questions for Chief at this time? Councilmember Kapowski?
In some of the examples that you provided from the other communities, it was notable that it mentioned that the host plus attendees had responsibility, like the host or owner or tenant or attendee had responsibility. But what you're presenting here looks like it's primarily the property owner. Can you explain that a little bit?
So Chris, correct me if I'm wrong on this, please. So Mayor and Councilmember Kaprowski. So the intent of the ordinance is the same. So whether it's you as a homeowner, you host a party that is declared an unruly gathering, or you leave your 18-year-old son in care of your home while you go on vacation somewhere, they are the responsible party for that area. If it's an Airbnb or a rental, the tenant, if it's an apartment, you're not looking to hold the the rental property owner, but the tenant that's renting that apartment. So I believe our language covers all of those, and that's the intent, is that it's whoever's hosting the party, the responsible person for that party.
That's correct, Mayor, council members. What responsible person, the way it's defined, it's the owner, landlord, or tenant, or the sponsor, host, or organizer of the unlawful gathering or the event. That's who's responsible. If it's a minor, then it's the parent. It will just kind of go up to the parents. So the parent's responsible whether or not they knew about it if the minor's left in charge. And the only exception to that is if there's illegal entry or trespassing, say a vacant building, and someone throws a party there, the owner's not responsible if they didn't know about it. That's the one exception to that.
Okay. I have one other comment regarding, I didn't really see it in the draft ordinance, but on this slide under unruly gathering, when you describe the disturbances, a lot of these make sense, but the first one, excessive noise or traffic, is very objective, and I would want to be careful to include something like that if it's not a combination with these other elements or a certain time period.
Mayor and Councilmember Kaprowski. Yes, these are just examples of things for us to consider. So one in itself doesn't necessarily dictate a violation. So time of day, middle of the night, in the middle of the daytime, we take that into consideration. We had that same discussion with our existing noise ordinance. We take that into consideration as well, the time, the location, the proximity. Are you in an industrial area? Are you in a residential area? So that is just a factor that we would consider, and one of the things that we would need to document of why do we believe it's unruly, in combination of if it's just excessive noise or traffic, that doesn't necessarily mean it's an unruly gathering. We would have to look at other factors which help support that. Otherwise, any noisy traffic street, we could declare it an unruly gathering. But yeah, it's just one factor of many.
Thank you, that was my main concern.
If I could just jump in, looking at, we just got a copy of Chandler's revised ordinance, and they've got very similar language what they're doing. One thing with traffic is they said impeding traffic, we have traffic, we could, if that would maybe help council be a little more comfortable, it's an unruly gathering where traffic's being impeded rather than just cars, we could add that if that's something that would interest you as well.
And Chris, traffic being impeded would be like cars being parked up and down both sides of the street and other cars not being able to get through?
Or people.
Or people,
Maybe.
okay.
So it could
Park
be people or
sideways,
things
yeah.
or bouncy houses, whatever. the case may be. I know that's more on the little kids, but in theory, it'd be the same. If you're impeding the flow of traffic, whether vehicles or people, or impeding upon your neighbor's property through the overflow of guests or equipment or vehicles, then that would be a violation.
And if I could add one more comment, just going back to the responsible person, in the ordinance, we did draft an exception. So we talked about owners, landlord, tenant, the hosts, they're responsible, the parents, if it's a juvenile. But the exception we have is if it's an owner, landlord, or tenant, if they're present at the they're not liable unless they were present, if you're an owner, landlord, or tenant, or they had knowledge of it and they didn't take any reasonable action to stop. So that's kind of an exception. If you're an owner and you just had no idea, not a parent, you're responsible, you had no idea this was going on, they're exempted from this unless we can show that, hey, you should have done something about it, then they could be held liable. The idea that I'd try to provide some type of exception to just a landlord that really had no idea nothing was going on.
That, just on that one, if I might, if it's an Airbnb that I've rented, that I throw a blowout party at, the landlord's not there, not present, doesn't know I'm going to host this party, that's one thing. The Airbnb has cameras in it, and the owner has access to those cameras, like a Ring camera, I'm going to say it's simple, right? The owner should know about that then. If there's 100 people coming into the home.
Correct. And what it says is an owner, landlord, or tenant, they can be responsible if they had knowledge of it and they took no reasonable action.
Okay.
To prevent it.
So if they saw the 100 people coming in and they just went to sleep and didn't call the police
then
and
they
say,
could
hey,
be liable. They could be liable under the statute if that's something that the police were able to prove.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
We could look at the host of the party as well, whoever rented it as well.
Okay.
Because you may have a situation where they don't have access to know, but they signed a contract that, and in those contracts, it usually will spell out no parties and whatnot, so they're in violation of their contract as well. And that somewhat different topic that would help the owner.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Tilke.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, was there any additional changes that you noted with Chandler's?
Those were just the two main ones. Those were the main ones.
Okay.
Other than that, it generally follows what Chandler is considering right now.
Okay. I bring that up because Councilmember Kaprowski and I met with other council members recently at a luncheon and from East Valley cities, and they were interested in being very similar. If we're going to do these types of ordinances that were similar, so that we're not, you don't know which side of the street you're on, and it's completely different. So I just wanted to check on that. One question, and I didn't ask it before, but when we reference a minor, well, the possession or consumption, oh, never mind. Well, okay, it says the use or possession of illegal drugs. So that just means anybody, whether you're a minor or not. And then the next sentence is the possession or consumption of alcohol or marijuana by minors. Is
Correct.
am I reading that right?
Mayor and Councilmember Tilke. So yes, but I want to emphasize, so the use or possession of illegal drugs. An example, marijuana is legal for adults,
Right.
but it's still illegal for someone under the age of 21.
Okay.
So that would be, while it's a legal drug, it's illegal based on your status, your age.
Yeah, okay. I think when I read it first, I was thinking that we were inadvertently saying minors can have alcohol and marijuana, but can't have those, but drugs are okay. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't what was saying, so thanks. In regards to the penalties, typically we do 3 strikes you're out. So usually it's 2 offenses, so you get fined and you get a higher fine. Third time it becomes habitual, I think, is normally how our ordinances read.
Mayor and Councilman Tilke, I believe that is correct. I don't know if we have a standard, Chris, I don't know if you know whether we have a standard protocol for 1 strike, 2 strikes, then criminal, or I believe it's up to the discretion of how you write the ordinance.
That's correct. The council can do it any way they want. Chandler was what their unlawful party ordinance prior to was civil only. What they're looking at now is the hybrid approach, a one-time civil fine, and if there's a second violation within 18 months, it would be a Class 1 misdemeanor. So they're really amping up what their penalties have been. It was never criminal before. They're looking at it now. Again, 18-month window. And what Chief had mentioned in his presentation, it's after there's a finding of responsibility. So the example that he gave, a party, 2 different parties a week apart. The second one, you couldn't cite criminal unless they were found responsible for the first one, and then you come back and you cite them criminal. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor, and up to the courts on, what the fines would be, potential jail time and all that.
Well, I like the hybrid progressive. So whether it's, because 18 months is a long time in between, and so it is. So I'm trying to figure out, is 2 plus, then it's criminal, is that appropriate in this case? Because normally, I'm usually advocating from the business side on something a little more minor than this. So that's why I'm trying to get my head around it. But I like it being kind of progressive. First time, maybe not as bad because things happen, right? But you obviously know the second time.
Mayor and Councilmember Tilke, just to point out another difference between our proposed ordinance and Chandler's. While theirs is 18 months, we have 180 days, so 6 months. So that's at your discretion as well. So we're looking at a 6-month time period for a repeat offense.
Great, thanks. I'm good.
Councilmember Torgerson.
Can you go back to the other slide you just had?
This one?
No, I think it's the next one. There we go. All right, and just Airbnbs generally do have a policy in contract with them that there are no parties. They can't have cameras inside. They can have a ring.
That's why I said ring.
Yeah, they can have a ring, but they can't have something inside. So unless somebody's problematic, unless you're showing that they have a history of it or they're advertising it as a party house, which some people do. I knew a guy in Arrowhead that did that, paid the price, $50,000 of damage, good for him. But when you see excessive noise or traffic, are we working off of the Gilbert noise ordinance, which we still have to fix?
So, Mayor, Councilmember Torgerson, so that's another tool in the tool belt, so to speak, of looking at, is it a noise or a traffic issue? In addition to an unruly, we may not have an unruly gathering, but we have a traffic issue or a noise issue.
Right.
It may be a calm crowd, but you've got the music cranked up so loud that you can hear it from a half mile away.
Yeah, but that wouldn't really make it necessarily an unruly gathering.
That's my point, is that you've got the different ordinances that you could look at in consideration. It's not always going to be one or the other.
Right, because, traffic, if you've ever used an Uber, they refuse to pull over. They will sit in the middle of the street to let you out. Don't know why, but it's just how it's done. And I don't know if would be considered impeding traffic. It does impede traffic, but it's standard practice.
Correct. Mayor and Councilmember Torgerson, in a one-off, if you have a Uber or anyone else that's blocking the roadway, that could be a civil violation in itself. If you've got 30 cars doing that, or there's no way for cars to get around or through a neighborhood because there's cars either parked or stopped blocking the roadway, then that helps us build the case for an unruly gathering.
All right, and when it says drinking in public, is the front of the property considered public, or is that their private property?
It's public, and I would refer that to because you get in the definition of curtilage. Are they in their curtilage? It depends on whether there's fencing or not. Is it open to the public? Can anyone walk up to that front door? How'd I do?
No, I think the thought here, you're listing different types of disturbances that could contribute to an unruly gathering. And I would think any one of these in and of themselves is not necessarily someone's drinking in public. Now you can get them from an unruly gathering. If they're on the sidewalk, maybe there's public consumption, but someone's sitting on their front porch drinking a beer, you're not going to get an unruly gathering on that. But that with traffic, lots of people in the street or the sidewalks, once you get more than one factor, I think that's where the police officer can has that discretion, determine, hey, is there something more here? Is this an unlawful party that's happening?
Yeah, because I could see drinking in the street, as being drinking in public. But, I mean, I don't care if there's 200 people in the front yard, it's their front yard.
Correct, and part of it, if you look at just right above those examples, it's, property being used in a manner which causes a disturbance of the reasonable enjoyment of the private or public property. So the idea is not just having a beer on your front porch. If you're having a party and then it's causing a disturbance in the neighborhood, that's where this could come into effect. If you're just out there drinking a beer on your front porch with some friends, that's not an unlawful gathering or an unruly gathering.
But if they're loud and they're drinking beer, then you're gonna consider it an unruly gathering?
That's up to the police for discretion. My guess would be allowed and just sitting on your front porch, no, not enough.
Right.
I doubt they would do that at all. Yeah.
So, Mayor, Councilmember Torgerson, it's very similar to the question that was brought up earlier. If you have one violation of, excessive noise or whatnot, we take the totality of the circumstances, because we have to build our case, whether it's civil or criminal, we have to present what factors led us to determine that it was an unruly gathering. One in and of itself normally would not be enough. But there's not a magic formula. It's one of those, you know it when you see it or hear it, and that's what we have to articulate in our reports of what are those contributing factors. And it could be, in addition to what you see in the ordinance, we can use other factors to help document. We talk about excessive noise. We could clarify that. Not in this, but in our reports, we could actually get a noise reading. There's different things we can do in addition to this to help support declaring a party an unruly gathering.
How many unruly gatherings does Gilbert have a year?
So we don't have a specific ordinance, but roughly in my initial scan of our calls for the last 3 years, and this is not roughly just over 400, between 400 to 450 a year. But that's not just, that could be kids playing in the pool. It could just be a noise disturbance. So it's not, we didn't have the ability to go through our current data to specify exactly what's that root cause and whether we took action on those initial calls. It was basically noise disturbances. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is a party.
Okay, thank you.
And I would point out that we have about approximately like 93,000 residences in Gilbert, so 400 a year, perhaps, if we put that in perspective. Councilmember Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm good with the 6 months. However, I'm also good with a hybrid when adults are involved. But I personally think if there's kids involved and you're having a party and they're drinking and doing drugs, I wouldn't give them a second chance as far as that goes for a misdemeanor or something.
Mayor and Councilmember Bongiovanni, there is a way for us to hit that impact like you're looking at. It could still be a civil penalty for the unruly gathering, but if there's contributing to delinquency of a minor criminal offense, if there's underage drinking or alcohol or drugs, that's an offense on either whoever's responsible or those who are actually doing it. So we do have, while it's hybrid and then your first offense may not rise to crime, we obviously are looking for other crimes that are occurring and holding anyone and everyone responsible for whatever crimes we can show. So in that case, you may have a civil penalty, but we either on the homeowner or those responsible for the actions, we have additional crimes that could occur. Because let's say you have a fight, a large party gets a little too large, we declare it unruly, and there was an assault that occurred. The unruly gathering would get the civil violation for whoever's responsible for the property, and then in addition to that, we could hold those responsible for the assault or disorderly conduct, whatever else we can prove.
So it would be the person that got involved, not necessarily the property
Yeah,
owner.
unless we could show you've seen some social media about fight clubs or you've seen fight nights. If we could show that they somehow hosted, then that's a different topic to where we could hold the owner responsible for that as well.
So if the owner is actually supplying the alcohol.
Yeah, again, contributing to delinquency of a minor.
Okay.
And then obviously if it's drugs, that makes it a different charge. Still contributing, but also you've got the drug charge as well.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Torgerson.
First rule, we don't talk about Fight Club. There was something earlier in there, and I just want the explanation for it, because it doesn't, I don't even understand how it would work. Noise mitigation software?
So that's a Scottsdale ordinance, and that's part of their noise ordinance. And I believe it's in the entertainment district, they have actually monitoring software where it sends the police and the homeowner, or the business owner, an alert that they've exceeded their decibels, and they need to correct it. My understanding is that it's somewhat beneficial, because they may not realize it's up, and so it's a good early warning system for both the police to do a drive-by or pay them a visit to see if it really is that high. And then sometimes it'll just be a one-time thing and it comes right back down. So they do have that in their ordinance
So
in
it's
Scottsdale.
monitoring, not mitigating.
Right, it is. They're trying to mitigate it by the early warning.
Oh, and in the entertainment district, that seems odd, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, it gets pretty loud on the street there.
yeah. Councilmember Buckley.
Thank you. I just have a couple of things. Most of my questions got answered. That's why I like to wait till the end, and I don't have to talk very much. But if there are parents do a party and there's kids there and the kids get involved in, like you said, a fight or something, can you cite both the parents and the kids? Or is this like, who's responsible for what?
Mayor and Councilmember Buckley, it depends on the circumstance of what they did. So I believe I heard the example was a fight, correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we would have to, so you would have the unruly gathering. If we declare it an unruly gathering, we can hold the homeowner or parent responsible for that. We would also hold the people responsible for the fight. Now, if we could do additional charges of either juveniles or adults that are somehow assisting with the assault, or somehow on the parent side, if you're contributing to the delinquency, whether it's alcohol or encouraging people to fight, we could use that as a charge as well. It's not just drugs and alcohol. Contributing to delinquency, you're harming the safety and welfare of a child.
Of everyone there.
Councilmember Buckley, if I could just add, in your scenario, if there's a large party, someone throws a party for teenagers, and it gets out of hand, and say there's a fight that spills onto the street and blocking traffic, all this stuff, the police will call, they'll respond to the fight, but currently the homeowner's got no responsibility unless there's, because we do not have an unruly gathering ordinance. There's nothing in the town that would hold that.
Disorderly conduct would be the closest.
they
We'd
could-
have to show they were
got it.
responsible and aware.
So that's all they could get right now without an ordinance like this in place.
Okay, I thought we had, like you said, a disorderly conduct or something, but, so the parents, we don't have anything. What about the county to hold the parents, like right now?
Mayor, Councilmember Buckley, no, not that I'm aware of on the county or the local level. With the state laws, disorderly conduct, assaults, delinquency, contributing to the delinquency of minor, that's all state statute, so any jurisdiction has the ability to charge that. Once again, we would just have to make that connection and show evidence to show that that person was responsible for the delinquency, or they were, in this case, hosting a party. Because we've been to some parties where it's obviously a criminal violation. This would be an additional thing that we could do. We can still do disorderly conduct. It does not prohibit us from taking criminal action on something that obviously needs to be, that is a crime, it needs to be corrected now. This would just be in addition to, if we didn't, either way, whether we're charging a crime plus this, or if we just charge this and there is no crime that occurred.
Okay. Yeah, and that, and obviously with what we've gone through all in the last 6 or 8 months, if there's injuries there, so there's a fight and somebody gets seriously injured, not anything worse. If the parents are not responsible for the fight, the child or the minor or the juvenile is responsible, well, I guess they can, because that now I recall that there were lawsuits filed, like on a civil action against the parents and the kids, I believe, in the recent one. So I wanted to make sure of that. I do agree with Councilmember Bongiovanni in regards to, I would like to see them cited right away. I know that maybe that's not the possibility, or it is if we put it in here, but I think that these kids need to be held responsible, and be held responsible when they're caught doing what they're doing, which you have been doing this whole time, and especially with the guy that dropped the fire hydrant, or not, yeah, I think, yeah. So I would like to see some of this have some consequence other than a fine, in my opinion, because we need to get it under control, and I think that without that, they're going to pay the fine. Most of them have the money to pay the fine. So they'll pay the fine and wait 6 months, and this is going to all start all over again.
Mayor and Councilmember Buckley, a couple points. I'm not an attorney, but I'll put on my somewhat attorney hat. We have to make sure that we're enforcing laws the same. You can't pick and choose who to apply them to, whether they be adults or juveniles. And we never take anyone's economic status into consideration when we decide whether to charge or not, or cite or not. Right. So the ordinance needs to be applicable to all in equal terms. Obviously, we have age definitions and laws that make it illegal for underage, whether a minor or a juvenile, to do things. That's different. But when it comes to hosting, I would just be careful to not set a different standard for youth as opposed to adults.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Yeah, I think, I want to wait for the next ordinance too, because I'm want to see what the age group is there, because that's my only concern there. All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, under the paperwork here, 42-95 penalties for habitual offender, we have a blank for person's liability for expense of emergency response. Maybe it was a myth, but I heard a story about stupid motorist law, where they have to pay for the full cost of emergency services. I'd like to see that, quite honestly, rather than saying $1,000. I'd rather see that they pay for full responsibility for it.
And Mayor and Councilmember Bongiovanni, that is up to your discretion as to what that may be. We can do actual costs, and I would include public safety. But on a flip side, let's say it's really bad, and we've got to close down streets, barricades. You've got public works as well. So I would make it a little more broader, actually, to say any town of Gilbert services, in order, using the language that we have for mitigating a response. I'm looking for my terms here. So I would just make sure it's not just exclusive to PD, because if we have fire response, you've got 5 that are responding plus the ambulance. So if we want true cost recovery, I would include all.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And there is a way through the courts as well, but this is in addition to, and that's specified in the language, that in addition to whatever restitution or fines that may come from a criminal charge, this is in addition paying for the response.
Any other comments or questions for Chief? Chief, how much work is it for you to pull that together if it's total costs? I'm just curious from a staff perspective.
We do it all the time, so
Okay.
it's not difficult. We go actual costs, so we'll pull the employee's hourly rate. We factor in a vehicle cost, gas basis. So if it's an hour, we do that on an hourly basis for the car, the gas, the employee, and we do that for each employee that responded. I don't recall if we do dispatch or not. I don't think we normally do, but those who are responding to the scene, going out to the scene, we charge. We accumulate that and charge it.
And like you just mentioned, that could be fire, police, ambulance, public works, depending on the situation.
Yep.
Okay. And I think I liked Councilmember Tilke said progressive hybrid version. That's probably the best way to term it in this situation. And Chandler hasn't made a final decision on theirs. They didn't vote on theirs last night because I thought they were going to, but I guess it sounds like they have not decided on theirs finally.
That's correct. It was a study session.
It was a study session.
Their first time looking at it last night.
Okay, thank
Again,
you.
what they're recommending is a fine, a civil fine under their civil code. They didn't identify a number. And then a second time after finding of responsibility within 18 months is a Class 1 misdemeanor. That's what they're looking at moving to right now.
And I believe it currently shows up to 2,500. They haven't specified the exact amount.
That's correct.
For the civil penalties, up to 2,500?
Yeah.
So depending on the situation, again, possibly, or they haven't decided yet, so it could be anything up to 2,500. But they could actually go higher than that because the council hasn't made a decision yet, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm good with all of this. I do appreciate that you have come at this from the perspective of 180 days versus 18 months, as I was thinking about it, and you've got, you know, somebody that's a junior in high school and they throw a party, 18 months later, they're out of high school, right? So when you put it in life perspective is what I was trying to do. And that's way too long, in my opinion, especially for what we're seeing with teens in Gilbert at the moment. So I think that the 180 days works well, and I guess I'm in agreement with everything that was mentioned here, including the full penalties, because if we need to charge what it's costing us. We need to recoup those fees, right? And so we need to recover those costs, and that, I'm good with that too. Any other comments, questions? Councilmember Tilke?
Mayor, I appreciated the addition of excessive noise or impeding traffic. If we could add that in ours, I think that would be well. I'm having a hard time coming up with a dollar figure, and that's my only concern, and I don't know, is this something we can just punt to you guys and based on case law, or, you know, what our fees are today, or do you need us to tell you tonight?
For the civil penalties, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One, if you could do a not to exceed amount, but understanding that then they get a civil violation if it's the first time they go into the civil court, at Gilbert Municipal Court. If it's not to exceed, the judge could set zero, right? There's a maximum and nothing. So if you want a minimum, you could do a minimum and maximum, not to be less than X, not to exceed X, or you can just set a fine amount, and that's what the judge would be tied to.
I kind of like the max and the minimum based on the fact that a judge couldn't say zero because we obviously had a call that the police responded to that has made its way into the court. So it needs to be at least a minimum of something, but it could be between this and this based on how unruly the gathering was, if you will, right? Using your terms.
And in that scenario, it would be up to the judge to determine, to set that penalty, listening to all the facts and really determine how bad it was, can determine where in that scale the appropriate fine would be.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember.
Because I just want to move us along. I know we have another one. So could, just to throw it out for consideration, a minimum of 500, maximum of 2,500? Is that reasonable for the situation you just described? Yeah, okay. Well, unfortunately, I don't like penalties. So this is hard for me. Yes, I have been doing that. But I think it needs to hurt a little bit, at least, you know, that it's taken seriously. So I think the next sorry, did you want to say something?
No, just Mayor and Councilmember Tilke, just to reiterate the fact that a civil fine in addition to recovery costs for actual response. There we go.
Right, yeah, that's still in here, yes. Yep. Thank you. And then I think the next question is, do you want to have a second offense with a much higher before it goes to criminal? Or do you want it the second time to go to criminal? That's the question.
I like the second time criminal. If you don't learn the first time around, too bad. Right between the eyes, I'm going to tell you.
Mayor and Councilmember Tilke, and Chris, again, correct me if I'm wrong on my number. You have the criminal offense, the state statute dictates the max penalty, and it's 2,500 is my understanding of what that max penalty can be of 2,500. So that would initially be the ordinance dictating what that fine is for a secondary offense. And I don't know if we could charge a secondary on top of the criminal fine.
I think we could include a fine on this, the
In
criminal
addition to.
plus the fine, plus a fine in addition to the Class 1 misdemeanor.
Okay, so
That really is progressive then, so, right, yeah.
so the second would be criminal plus a fine of, right? Within 6 months.
Within 6
yes.
months. Mhm.
Yeah. So, and then you said it's 2,500 for criminal?
Based on state law, the max could be 2,500 issued by the court. As Chris just mentioned, you could also have the town's fine of up to whatever, 500 to 2,500 as deemed. And that, so in that case, he would have to come back to our court, correct, Chris? So, well, either way, it'd still be in our court because we're talking misdemeanors.
Misdemeanors.
So do you mind if I restate
No,
just
that'd
to
be
see
great.
if we got it? First offense is civil with a minimum fine of 500 to maximum 2,500, which includes the expenses for the emergency response. Second offense, and this is within 60 days, it would be a criminal offense, whatever fine that the court gives you, plus the town of Gilbert's fine, which could be between $500 and $2,500 again. Does that make sense?
It was
What-
within 6 months.
Within 6 months, yes.
Yes.
And-
Yeah.
You said 60 days.
Oh, sorry. I keep looking, I have an 18 and I have an 180.
And then the fines are added to the cost from the town.
Yes, for the emergency.
It
Included.
wasn't clear
Right,
when
you
you said
said
that.
included.
Okay,
Yeah, you
great.
said included.
Thank you. I was trying to get it all, but thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was.
So staff has direction on this one, based on what Councilmember Tilke just laid out with feedback. And when we bring this back, yes, Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I've got the 6 months. Chandler says if there's a second violation within 18 months. I just want to make sure that council understands that the 18 months is much more harsh. 6 months, because 18 months is a long time to have, you have one party and then, 17 months later you have a second and you're hit with a misdemeanor on the second time, 17 months later. The way the council's doing it, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure you're clear that here you have a party in month 1 and you have a party in month 9, that party in month 9 is a civil again because it's the 6-month window. I want to make sure you understand, the longer the time, the harsher it is, and make sure that's the council intent.
Because you have to behave yourself for a longer
For a
amount of time.
much longer time. 18 months is a long time
It's
to
different
behave
when
yourself.
when you
Yes.
lay it out that way, Chris,
Correct.
yes.
I'm okay with the 18. I'm all for harsh.
That means you have to be well-behaved for a longer period of time. See, when you turn something the other way, it just, yep.
Yep, okay, so
Well, I
we'll,
appreciate that, because I wasn't
thinking it
capturing
from
that.
that
yes, I
perspective,
just want to
no.
make sure. So I will put that at 18, and just to clarify, I did reach out. When it comes to misdemeanors, there's fines that are set, so a Class 1 misdemeanor is up to 2,500.
Okay.
Already.
Already.
It's already built into the misdemeanor. So I don't think we need to add another fine if council's fine with that. If there's a second offense and it's criminal, then the court can do up to $2,500 just on its own, just like that.
But always plus cost.
And then cost on top of that, correct, in any scenario.
Yes, and make sure it explains out the full cost, like Chief explained with all public safety, public works, any town employees that need to respond.
Okay,
However you want to word that, however is appropriate.
got it.
Yep, thank you. Okay, Chief, next, brass knuckles.
Review of brass knuckles incidents. So as we've heard over the last 6 months, the state does not have any prohibitions on brass knuckles. Obviously, if brass knuckles are used in an assault, then they can be charged with aggravated assault because you're using a weapon. But just possession of itself is not illegal in the state. In Phoenix, it's unlawful to sell, give away, or to possess for the purpose of sell or giving away. Also unlawful for any person except for a police officer to carry brass knuckles concealed. Those are both Class 1 misdemeanors, and that there's not an age restriction on Phoenix's code. That is all individuals. Yuma, again, it's all adults, or excuse me, all individuals, it's not by age. Unlawful for any person to sell, give away, or to possess for the purpose of sell or giving away, except for resell, to a law enforcement officer or licensed security guard, and that's criminal as well. Looking at our cases over the last, since 21, over the last 3.5 years, we have had 6 calls in 2021, and this is based on, we did a keyword search for any time brass knuckles were mentioned in a report. And so in 2021, we had 6 incidents. 2 of those, there was no crime related whatsoever. And then in the other 2, brass knuckles were stolen, 1 in a vehicle burglary and 1 in a residential burglary. And in the other 2 cases, it was someone we arrested, not for using the brass knuckles, but they had brass knuckles in their possession when we made the arrest. In 2022, we had 13 calls for service that included brass knuckles. 3 of those were not, no crime occurred. 6 of those were assaults, and those 6 were the youth incidents. 4 additional cases where someone we arrested had brass knuckles in their possession. And then 2023, we had 10 total incidents. 2 of those were not crimes. Only 1 involved in assault, and that was with adults involved. And then the other 7 were people we arrested, and they had brass knuckles in their possession when we arrested them. So a total of 29 incidents over those 3 years. And I'm assuming Chandler used the same criteria. I believe there were 55 incidents in that same time period, just for reference. The proposed ordinance, this is, and you've got the hard copy, this is the same as what Chandler's proposing. And this is age-based. So prohibiting the sell to or the supply of and possession of brass knuckles by a person under the age of 18 years of age. So you could not sell or give someone that's 17 or younger brass knuckles. It would make it illegal for you to do so, and it also makes it illegal for the juvenile to possess those brass knuckles. Both of those are a Class 1 misdemeanor, and the penalties up to 6 months in jail, up to 3 years probation, and then, as we talked in the last discussion, up to $2,500 fine. Much simpler ordinance than the last one. It's you either have it or you don't. You're possessing it. As we saw with the state with the legislation proposed earlier this year, it was a total ban. It did not matter age, and that was some of the discussion that occurred as it went through committees. Obviously, we know that that did not pass, and thus the reason why we're here today to discuss an ordinance in Gilbert similar to what Chandler is doing.
Thanks, Chief. I wanted to say on the last ordinance, it seems like the unruly gatherings has escalated over the last few years, seeing all the cities and towns that have changed their ordinances or created new ordinances. And I forgot to mention that, which, you know, it's not just Gilbert. Obviously, we're hearing that this is a nationwide issue, and I think coming out of the pandemic especially, we've seen so many changes in people and the way they react to things. So, yeah. Councilmember Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to the first slide there, Mike, about the arrests?
Sorry, where'd it go? There it is.
There it is. Okay, so the adult, how old was that adult?
22.
22, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Torgerson.
First, you might want an Oxford comma in that, what you wrote there.
What's that?
Supply of, comma, and possession.
Yes.
So Oxford comma might be kind of cool there for you. I'm curious as to why police officers were allowed to carry in Yuma and Phoenix.
That's a Yuma question, Mayor.
Yeah, because I see no grand purpose in that. I mean,
I don't either. So that surprised me.
right, and yeah, but I do understand when you're saying under 18, we don't let people smoke cigarettes under 21 according to federal law. So this, I don't see a true self-defense issue with brass knuckles, but I just wanted to ask that question because it just, I'm made of questions when there's things like that. We want our cops to have some brass knuckles. Yeah. It goes back to Fight Club, so I'll wait for the answer.
Yeah.
Can't talk about Fight Club.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Torgerson, there are some antiquated laws, maybe they're allowed it in Yuma, but we do not, we never have.
Thanks, Chief. Councilmember Buckley?
Can you go back to the,
Councilmember, can you talk into your mic, please? Thank you.
I thought I had it in the right spot. I never have it in the right spot. Okay, oh, no, I'm sorry. The one that you went back to with Chuck, that has the age limit on there.
Here?
Okay, so you have just under 18. I would personally like to see that under 21 and under. The kids, they can't buy alcohol under 21. They can't smoke under 21. And there's something else they can't do, a lot of other things they can't do. But I think if we're going to do this ordinance, is there something legal that we can't do that?
Mayor, Councilmember Buckley, there's no legal prohibition that I'm aware of, and that was part of the discussion when they talked about the state law of what age should it be. So it is up to council's discretion as to what age that should be, or if there is even an age limit on it, that is up to your discretion as well. What we presented to you is what Chandler is considering, as well as us in Gilbert.
So by law, no one, oh, wait a minute, we don't have that law. We don't have the law at all.
We actually do. There is a state law about brass knuckles being a deadly weapon, and there is a state law for 21 about having brass.
21 and above. So I
Mayor
would
and
like.
Not
Buckley.
not purchasing though, correct?
Yeah, well,
Injuries.
there's not a current law that prohibits brass knuckles from being purchased, sold, or possessed by anyone. The use of brass knuckles makes it illegal. The possession does not. Just want to
So you can
clarify.
have them, you just can't use them
Right.
by the law that is currently in place.
Well, yeah, well, that's not working, obviously. But, yeah, can we, so is the answer yes or no? Can we do 21 and under if everyone agrees on
It
that?
would be up to a concession of a majority of this group if they would be willing to go above 18. Next to speak is Councilmember Kaprowski, so if you'd like to make your comments and comment on it at the same time, that would be great.
Sure. Chief, thanks for the presentation. I recall that earlier in the year when you were giving data about our teen violence in the community, it wasn't limited to 13 to 18-year-olds. It was a range of 13 to 22-year-olds approximately. And so I had the same concern that Councilmember Buckley just mentioned in terms of limiting this to juveniles. And I'd like the language to match with regard to the age if we decide on an age. I would personally want a total ban unless you can maybe explain any proponents or what the pros and cons are.
Mayor and Councilmember Kaprowski, I am in agreement with you. It's easier for us as a police department to enforce if it's a total ban. That's why we were in support of the initial language from the state. It was a total ban on possession. And I won't argue the other side of whether it be self-defense or collector items. That is one that I heard quite often was collector items, and if it was passed down through the family for whatever reason, they didn't want it to be illegal to have it in a display case in office or something like that. So I'm in favor of a no age limit. If we want to be consistent, then we'd have to talk to Chandler about changing that. I know that's some discussion that's been in others, but in the two examples we do have, Yuma and Phoenix, there isn't an age limit. It's illegal for anyone, regardless of age. And that's, again, up to the discretion of council.
So with the concern you mentioned about maybe someone having it as a display item, is there something that, would you recommend any kind of support that would say that, like, if you're in a home for another reason, you couldn't, I guess, get them on this if it was in a secured location?
So Mayor and Councilmember Kaprowski, in my interpretation of the way we would apply that law, if it said illegal to possess, if I'm in a household for legal justified reasons and I happen to see some brass knuckles in a drawer or in a display case, while it is in the possession of your house, it's not in the possession of the person. And this law, this ordinance is mandating that someone in their possession does not have it. Now, keep in mind too, you factor in language of reasonably accessible. So we've made several traffic stops, and some of the ones I showed you that it wasn't a crime, but we arrested somebody, we arrested people for DUI, criminal speeding, and underneath the seat were the brass knuckles. And so, to me, that would be possession as well, if it's within their reach, and that's what we would have to document in our reports of why, if it's in the trunk, locked in a case, it is in the possession of the vehicle, but that would be a hard argument for us to make and get a conviction that they could easily possess it. Now, if they admitted, yeah, I just stuck it there when I saw you coming, then that's a little bit different, but we would make that distinction in our reporting that how is it easily accessible without having to define it in law, because then you get a very long ordinance or a state statute which dictates all the exceptions to the rule. So when we talk possession, within the body or within reasonable reach.
Thank you for that explanation. Based on that information, I would support the ordinance as a total ban. Thank you.
Councilmember Bongiovanni?
Thank you, Mayor. I would support either one, definitely under 21. I know maybe some other cities around us may want to do 18, but heck, I'd like to see someone from Chandler drive over the town border and throw the brass knuckles outside. So I'm good with 21, or I'm good with total ban if the rest of the council supports that. But definitely under 21 for me.
Councilmember Torgerson?
I would think under 18 is a reasonable thing. People go to war and die at 18, and I'm just absolutely unwilling to start impeding into an adult. When it's used in a crime, it's already a mitigating factor and illegal. What we've been having a problem with is a few kids, and the numbers speak to a few. We don't have a rampant problem. We have an ugly problem. We have a problem that's resulted in a little bit of horror here, which is really sad, but this isn't going on day in and day out. And I don't see any reason to start going into people's rights. I don't see a reason to go into anything. Once you're 18, you're an adult, and if you use that, you're gonna pay the price. What we're trying to do is mitigate some teen violence, not 35-year-old violence that's already regulated by the state. I'm a hard 18.
Record this. I completely and totally 100% agree with Jim Torgerson. Councilmember Tilke, or Vice Mayor, would you like to comment?
I'm still noodling it around a little bit, but I think the consistency between the communities is important, but they haven't passed theirs yet. So if we pass ours, then they can take a look at it and decide what they want to do, obviously. I just wanted to share the information.
Let me point out that they may pass theirs before we actually get back to passing ours, because we're just discussing tonight too, so.
But I think, Chris, you're going to keep them informed, right?
Are they going to?
Correct. I can notify the Chandler City Attorney of the direction that we're going, but I believe they're meeting next week. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
They usually meet within a week after they do their
Study
study
session.
session. So they'll be before this comes back before the council.
That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just
Oh,
wanted to
no.
point that out.
Yeah, thanks. What I'm going back to is the definition of a juvenile and a minor. And so a minor, if I read the other ordinance, is 21, and a juvenile is 18. And so I think, are we looking at this as a juvenile issue, minor issue, or just an issue overall? And I thought we had come looking at it as a juvenile issue, but so I'm just trying to get my head around that. So I don't know where I am on it. Sorry.
Vice Mayor?
That's how I understood it also, as a juvenile issue, so I do support the 18. Yeah.
So it sounds like we have a majority, well, we have, Councilmember Bongiovanni was 21 hard.
Not hard. I mean,
Because you said both to start, I
yeah,
think.
I mean, I just want this to go through.
Right.
If it's going to go through at 18, it goes through at 18, I'm fine with that. This just needs to get resolved.
Councilmember Kaprowski?
I would just ask that there be greater consideration for the data in our community in terms of bringing it to the age of 21, since those individuals within that range are the ones that we're seeing the greatest issue with. So I have concerns that if we keep it at juveniles under 18, it's not going to have any effect or any change in the community. It's a lackluster ordinance at that point.
Mayor, could I ask a question just quick? Sure. Based on that, some of the issues that we've been encountering during the investigations is something happens when you're a juvenile and then you're a minor, or and somewhere in there you're going to be investigated or whatever as an adult. So I think that in those cases, 21 kind of clears that up a little bit, because some of these actions are happening during that phase. But can you tell me how that works?
Mayor and Councilmember Tilke, so for adjudication, when you are 17 or younger, the charge would go to Maricopa County Juvenile Court. Oftentimes, when they're 17, almost 18, they will defer that back to the city court for a misdemeanor charge. But for all adults, if it's just the misdemeanor charge, it's going to go to the town court. But that's the only difference for charging, is that if they're 17 or younger, it's going to go to juvenile court. If it's 18 or older, it's going to go to the town court.
Chief, if I, and council, if I could just add, this is a town ordinance, right? It's obviously not a state law,
So it would come to us, right?
the likelihood, if it got referred from the police department to county juvie, they'd probably kick it back to the town court because they prosecute state laws there. They don't typically will prosecute a city code, a city ordinance, so it will likely end up back in Gilbert, even though they're juveniles.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Unless for some reason we can justify why we couldn't, which we can't. So we would take it.
Unless there were other charges, say there were other state law violations, then likely the county would just take it all and prosecute all in one bundle.
For example, if we had a DUI and he or she was in possession of brass knuckles, that superseding charge DUI as a juvenile would go through.
The county would take them both, likely.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, then I'm leaning towards the 21, just based on the data and the incidences that we've been dealing with between those ages. I think it makes it a little cleaner in the way that we handle that.
Councilmember Torgerson?
I'm going to read it. It'll get kicked back to us is the first thing. And if it's used in the commission of a crime, it is a mitigating factor on a felony, correct?
So if it's used, it's going to be a felony for, regardless of age, it's going to be
Right.
charged as a felony.
So I'm saying we respect the system, keep it at 18 so that it discourages the kids from getting it, the kids that are doing whatever. But once they're 18, if they're using it or they're even brandishing it, it's probably going to be considered menacing.
Potentially, we'd have to show that, yes.
So I would prefer to respect the rights of the adults in the room and not start to try and spread this beyond what it was initially intended to be juvenile. In fact, I'm going to stay at a hard 18.
100% agree again. Councilmember Kaprowski?
I would just like to add that an 18-year-old could be a senior in high school. So I think that when you're trying to separate them, it makes it more difficult because people that are 16 and 17 are going to have friends that are 18 and 19. The biggest separation I feel is obviously, maybe high school and college. In college, people are going out and they're in different areas, but we're seeing this with a certain age group. And I feel like we are cutting the line right in the middle of a certain population, and so that's going to just make it less effective.
Federal law cuts it at 18 for a lot of things too. Should we ask the feds to change laws or the state to, he's 18 but in high school, so we should change that. It's a line in the sand. The line in the sand was drawn at 18. That's when, people pay their taxes, go to war, whatever it is. There's a line in the sand that's 18. It's not a line in the sand if you're in high school. So I'm going to be hard at 18.
Me too, 100%. So if the majority, if the consensus is to go to 21, then you're probably going to have a 5-2 vote, potentially, maybe 4-3. 4-3 vote on that. It would be nice if we could have a consensus on this, but I'm not budging. I was having a hard time with this to start with. I could definitely support the town supporting this at the state level. If it was Bridget Peterson supporting it at the state level, I would have been a hard no, because I have different beliefs as myself. So me voting on this would have been really different for me, and to go above 18, I'm 100% with Councilmember Torgerson on this. I'm a hard no on that. So we can bring it forward, but it is what it is. Councilmember Bongiovanni?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not willing to have this not pass. I'm okay to go to 18.
It's still going to be a 4-3. Well, it's still going to be a 4-3. I mean, right now, it passes either way, so. We have to give staff direction. Do you want them to bring back an ordinance that says 18, or do you want them to bring back an ordinance that says 21? 18.
18.
You have your consensus, that's 4, so.
Okay, 4 at 18.
Bring back 18, we'll see what happens.
All right, Mayor, Council,
goes
thank you.
4-3 'cause they
Just
don't
to
like
cover
18.
next steps, obviously, we'll draft this up as quickly as possible, so we may be able to get the next council meeting, if not June. And then, as this slide indicates, we'll do education.
And I would like to try and stay consistent with Chandler. If Chandler somehow goes off the rails and comes back with something different, then you can report back to us, Chris. But I think for this area, it's important, and I think we did, Councilmember Torgerson really put it well, that we came into this with a solution to the juvenile issues that have been going on in our community, and this is what we heard from the community, and this is our answer to that.
And we will plan on bringing this 2 weeks on May 21st, and we'll keep an eye out on what Chandler does as well.
Okay, thank you very
Report
much.
back at that night.
Thanks so much. Okay, we will adjourn this study session and get ready for the influx of kids.